I've been waiting on your call. Oh, need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been so patient with you, don't you know? I've been so down with you, and you know it. You never come around, and I show it. Just give me one chance right now, and I won't blow it. I won't blow it. Oh, and you know, I've seen better days. Yeah, you know, I've been through some things. Yeah, I've been sending prayers through the roof. Oh, truth. Yeah. Don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on you, yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Been waiting on your call right now. I wanna hear your voice somehow, yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh,
Hey,
Let's get connected.
connected. Let me be the calm when it get hectic. Let me be the one knowing you left it. Connected. Let's just hit the plug and get connected. Feel it through your body, don't run my electric. Let's get
if you feel
The way I do,
go make your move.
'cause I need you to help me for the nights too. The way I do,
Go make your move.
'cause I need you.
Can't focus, but your body give me clarity. I can tell the way you move and how you stare at me. I'm obsessed with the way you caress me. I undress you with my eyes and you bless me. I confess my love and affection. I'm blinded by all the imperfection. Recognize the dark in you perfection. Can't wait to make you my selection. North side, let's get connected. West side, let's get connected. East side, let's get connected. South side, let's get connected. Worldwide, let's get connected. Local side, let's get connected. Online, let's disconnect it. Offline, let's get connected.
Let's get connected.
Yeah.
The way I do,
Go make your
between. Zero, one, go pick your type. Don't think, just fall in line. What's the point of living life if it ain't even mine? All the best things I know sit in the void, and makes me wanna scream. And I'm something else.
I don't care who I'm meant to be.
'Cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between. Cause I'm something else. I don't care what you see in me. Cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between. Tell me when you love. Tell me when you love. Could it be me? Be your fantasy? Tell me when you love. Could it be me? Be your fantasy? Tell me when you love.
just dropped. Can't catch my breath. There's sand in the hourglass has stopped. You light up my world in ways I can't explain. Your electricity's running through my veins. Oh, baby, I can't help it. I've never felt like this. Only you can do what you do. Only you give me that deja vu. Only you. Before you found me, I was floating among the stars. No direction till I landed in your arms. Destiny makes sense when I look in your eyes. A new force of nature that brings me to life. Oh, baby, I can't help it. I've never felt like this. Only you can do what you do. Only you give me that deja vu. Only you.
Firing shots, high caliber round. If you know what's best, then you better get down. Down. Get down. Down. Better get down. Down. Get down. I wanna see you get to the ground. You're being held up by the UK sound. Firing shots, high caliber round. High caliber round. Then you better get down. High caliber round. Then you better get down. High caliber round. Then you better get down. High caliber round. Firing shots, high caliber round. If you know what's best, then you better get down. Down. Get down. Down.
People don't let it talk, only the text. And each time they give up on each other, go next.
People don't let me talk, only the text. Many times they give up on each other, go next. Fear being cast out, not that complex. We only need to realize and need them body flex for us and not build a barrier around ourselves. Same ideology for riding many tracks. Give one point, I would say otherwise. It's only in a discipline and not a bigger price. So in affection, you cry on my shoulder. This might be the biggest showdown in my soul. Not trying to bore ya, but all these ideas in my head are getting me to falter. Always sending me a big paragraph. Same context I made when I left home, red, fair and square. Yeah, I guess I'm alright now. Drenching my mind in the alcohol and everything is blessed.
Only the text. And each time they give up on each other, go next.
All my energy is placed in my time in the energy. If you don't like the way I think, don't need to be the love of me. Try to fix my mind and the habits would be using me. All are in the way I say, 'cause I know that you embellish me. Tripping on my love, but I don't feel the same way. I'm sorry, baby, go ahead and kill me. You ripped out all the segments of my soul, 'cause you need me. With that, I'm still here distracted by the same.
Cry on my shoulder. This might be the biggest showdown in my soul. Not trying to bore ya, but all these ideas in my head are getting me to falter. Always sending me a big paragraph. Same context I made when I left home, red, fair and square. Yeah, I guess I'm alright now. Drenching my mind in the alcohol and everything is blessed.
I can go anywhere, walk the desert in the sun, lost and I don't care. I'm feeling lighter, lighter. At the finish line, you can't cheat me now. Flying like a satellite, I'm so far away, can't get me back. You wanna take it in my mind, cloak and daggers, snakes and ladders. Thinking of the reason why it's always the weak ones who attack. You got nothing else in life, it's all that matters. Snakes and it's all that matters. Snakes and ladders. How does it feel to fall now that you're in this alone? No more comfort, 'cause those days are over now. I've seen that side. Can't believe I let you wear me down. All the memories unwind, taking me higher, higher. Past the finish line, you can't cheat me now. Can't get me back. In my mind, daggers, snakes and ladders. Thinking of the reason why it's always the weak ones who attack. Got nothing else in life, all that matters. Snakes and nothing else in life, it's all that matters. Snakes and
Why's it always seem like I'm moving backwards? Caught up in a dream, everybody's actors. Why's it always seem like people change faces and nothing is real? Better days. Yeah, you know, I've been through some things. Yeah, I've been sending prayers through the roof. Oh, truth. Yeah. Don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been so patient with you, don't you know? I've been so down with you, and you know it. You never come around, and I show it. Just give me one chance right now, and I won't blow it. I won't blow it. Oh, and you know, I've seen better days. Yeah, you know, I've been through some things. Yeah, I've been sending prayers through the roof. Oh, truth. Yeah. Don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on you, yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Been waiting on your call right now. I wanna hear your voice somehow, yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh,
Hey,
Let's get connected.
connected. Let me be the calm when it get hectic. Let me be the one knowing you left with. Connected. Let's just hit the plug and get connected. Feel it through your body, don't hurt my legs.
if you feel
The way I do.
gonna make you move,
'Cause I need you to help me for the night too. The way I do.
gonna make you move.
'Cause I need you.
undress you with my eyes and you bless me. I confess my love and affection. I'm blinded by all the imperfection. Recognize the dark imperfection. Can't wait to make you my selection. North side, let's get connected. West side, let's get connected. East side, let's get connected. South side, let's get connected. Worldwide, let's get connected. Local side, let's get connected. Online, let's disconnect it. Offline, let's get connected.
Let's get connected. The way I do. 'Cause I need you to help me for the night through. The way I do. 'Cause I need you to
I need you. North side, let's get connected. West side, let's get connected. East side, let's get connected. South side, let's get connected. Worldwide, let's get connected. Local side, let's get connected. Online, let's disconnect it. Offline, let's get connected.
Eu não sei quando parar. Só quando você voltar.
Welcome back, everybody, to Division 1. We're kicking off on a day that's not so normal for us here for really any action, whether it be Valorant or League of Legends here for the league. We're still kicking off on a day that's absolutely necessary. We had to get that Stony Brook and Winthrop game on the docket and out of the way before we kick off this next weekend, so we've chosen one of the last possible days to do it, a Friday afternoon here in Dallas. But this one's going to be a great matchup. A story for Stony Brook, who took down Winthrop in playoffs just last split, now has the chance to do it again here early to the start of the second split.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. Considering what Stony Brook was kind of really getting themselves into the move and groove of, they looked phenomenal by the end of the season. It's just unfortunate we didn't get to see their primary roster come into play for that playoff stage, and we did see that kind of rematch coming their way, or at least against Maryville. So knowing that they had the potential to do it, I think, honestly, this roster, it comes down to whether or not we can see them live up to the expectations that they're really starting to set during that kind of latter half.
Yeah, we had looked at Stony Brook. They were the initial team we were calling the dark horse throughout that split, right? That was the talking point for this roster throughout all of the last 4 or 5 months. It became West Virginia right during playoffs itself, but Stony Brook was still making a really great run on that side of the bracket. They just had to deal with Maryville on that side, so it became a bigger problem for them, down that line. And then they obviously, like you said, played that secondary roster, and they didn't come away with that victory. No matter the case, Stony Brook are coming in with their main roster here today. We'll go and show everybody the rosters for both of these squads coming into this one, but Stony Brook are coming in with their normal roster: Abel, Gunny, Majestic, Big Tonka T themselves, and Thomas. So we are expecting to see the same level of power, the same level of prowess out of this Stony Brook roster that we were seeing on that historic rise throughout the entirety of last split, only losing a couple of games, a couple that arguably, Dallas, you and I, we were upset with them for a little bit there in the latter half of that split right before playoffs for some of the losses they were taking, but a team that had, the chance to really beat any team, let alone, some of the best, like they ended up doing in playoffs when they did take down Winthrop right before taking that loss with their sub team over to that Maryville roster. The story, though, can't be said the exact same way for Winthrop. We talked a little bit about Stony Brook having their secondary roster for it. Well, Winthrop's roster today is not going to be their primary. In fact, a lot of their players are out. Well, one, if you're Glyph, you're no longer with this team. You've gone fully on into VCT. You're now on M8s. So you've made it to that next level in VCT, and then you also have Infiltrator and Governor, who are currently playing for Crew and subbing in for that roster right now. So you have the whole team basically is still trying to figure out exactly where they are, and they're gonna have to start off this split not having everybody here. Though Fair and Jerk are here, and Strong Tall Guy, mind you, it feels like this Winthrop roster is playing with a majority of their subs right now, and is going to have to start off this semester hoping to have these players step up to the plate to send against a ridiculously tough team like Stony Brook is.
I mean, keep in mind that the majority of these subs, they had that experience inside of D1, at least when it came around to the last split. We saw the main roster being inside of that kind of, ascension stage. So they had a lot of other things on their plate in the meantime. And these are the guys who were here, who were competing in it, and they're the first ones to bat now. So they should be the ones who are kind of acclimated to the scene. They are most definitely accustomed to competition days, and this shouldn't be too much of a kind of out of the way form. It should be very much inside of their form of what they're really used to. So I'm expecting to say it play to that same precedent, that same expectation that we're typically used to seeing them in. But even then, still, it comes down to these new members. I don't think they're going to make that big of a twist. It really just comes down to Winthrop knowing that they usually like to go for that individual talent. I even made the joke to you where we were talking about that kind of storyboarding, looking at this team, saying some of the guys are swapped out. But, when we're looking at Winthrop, they're saying, oh, no, we lost 2 guys. Sign in RG from last year. Why not? Let's just find something there. They're working on individual prowess here, and they have always managed to do that. But I think Stony Brook has a more kind of cohesive unit inside of an entirety of a team, knowing that synergy is still present. And I think that should be the edge for them, knowing that they were the ones to beat Winthrop last semester.
Yeah, so I think the big talking point for us, and the way it has been for a lot of, I would say the team so far, we talked a lot this weekend, you and I doubling out every weekend, right, for the first split of this season, this semester, I should say. It was always this kind of like replacement versus revision. What are these teams going to do? Well, here for Stony Brook with this exact same roster, the story for us has always been surprise versus standard. They shocked us, and we were considering them that dark horse last split. Now they've set that standard for us, and they need to maintain and uphold that standard for the remainder of this split going into playoffs and making their presence known even further. And a great way to do that on paper is to do that against Winthrop. The Winthrop, one of the top 2 teams you're expecting to be in the grand finals last split. That was the expectation. So we want to see that standard of Stony Brook continue moving forward. And the best way to do that is by maintaining this roster that was already infinitely impressing us the entirety of last split. There were so many moments we were seeing out of Abel. There's so many moments with our agent selection that a lot of teams would falter. And you can already see the first highlight clip here is from Abel. What perfect timing for that. Every moment you see coming out of the Stony Brook roster was something where you go, holy cow, where's this team kind of come out of the woodworks from? Right. And we had called it in, I think, week 2's interview, actually, or maybe it was week 1's interview with Moves at the beginning of last split after their victory, straight up saying, or Maryville's after their victory, straight up saying, yeah, I think we need to actually keep an eye out for Stony Brook. And that's when everyone at Tilt Proof opened their eyes and go, okay, maybe we do need to start paying attention to this team. And that's when they became that dark horse, and now hopefully can be that standard of play we're expecting to see from them.
I mean, that was really what it came down to, though. The reason the surprise comes into play is because the start of their first split wasn't really all that hot. I mean, they were figuring things out. They were kind of getting stuff together. They had a little bit of time with each other, but they never really kind of feel like we're holding down to the expectation. Like, as CVAL, you get a very, very broad scope of teams. I mean, that are going ahead, entering. You never really know what you're going to be running into. You're kind of keeping eyes on teams. You don't know who's been recruiting what. Maybe scrims are going phenomenal. Guys are just going insane on ranked. They're scrimming, whoever they can really find, and maybe these like tier 3 teams, whatever the case may be. But when you look at kind of here inside Div 1, when you look at actually being in a league, knowing you're facing consistent people, knowing you have those VODs to work with, knowing every single game is streamed, it's one of those things where Stony Brook was kind of out of the loop, it felt like initially, but they started picking that momentum. We saw that over the course of that entire split. They looked better and better and better, and it always kind of felt short a little bit early on. But I mean, that's where the standard comes into play here, where up against Winthrop, this was the team that they ended up beating. This was probably the most exciting game of the entire split that we saw kind of unravel in front of us, and knowing that they were the ones coming in on top, it's a matter of, can they double down on that? Can they repeat that success? And can they do it early to let these other teams know, hey, if they deserve that second slot like we thought they did, they need to find it early. And them in West Virginia, I think, are then the biggest runners between that spot if Winthrop does go ahead and end up losing this first week.
So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, Dallas. I'm just going to bring this up as a contending point. We talked a lot about St. Clair and the way that the Saints were improving throughout last semester, and the way that kind of felt like they came out of nowhere, finally being really competitive. They get to the grand finals. For Stony Brook, it was a different story. Them improving throughout the split was not because they were getting better. In fact, I think they were catching up to their potential. They were catching up to where they truly belonged and where they were meant to be playing. And it just took them a while, like you said, to kind of work into that system, playing the same static opponents, having the VOD reviews, being able to quickly check in on who you're facing against, something that maybe they didn't have as much experience in the CVAL stage, with how many teams there are and who they're having to face and the competition that goes through. So that then brings up this worrying position in my eyes for Stony Brook, saying if that is where they got to, right? They reached that standardization that we wanted to say they're getting to, right? If they've reached that, how can they improve from this point onwards? And this is where we then have to bring into question, how's their coaching staff? How's the IGL going to evolve? How are these players going to continue to flesh out their roles and positions? Are they going to make changes in agent selection? Are their map pools going to widen? How is this team going to get better than they were? Because obviously where they were still wasn't enough to come away with a victory and push themselves into that grand finals and make that big step in the very first split of Division 1. So with everything being said there, what is next for Stony Brook? And did they truly reach their max potential, or did they fizzle out right there towards the end and unfortunately not able to make the biggest graces known?
I mean, that's going to be something that we get to see today. Because keep in mind, I mean, Stony Brook was the team who I think was on this kind of like, if you follow football, the Indiana of last season. When you kind of look at what they were doing, I mean, we were inside of interviews with them, and they were mentioned they weren't not going to celebrate, not going home, not really going to take dinner, whatever break it may be necessary. They were immediately hopping at that VOD review, immediately going and looking forward to that next week. I mean, you saw the guys sitting in their chairs, not really freaking out all that much, not celebrating too much, understanding, okay, great. Game's over. Next week starts right here, right now. I mean, there is no downtime. Sure, get your sleep in, get your studies in, but I mean, when it comes around to the game of Valorant, and especially when it comes around to actually being inside of leagues, being in these orchestrated structures that, allow for that kind of constructed play, the ranked games don't really matter that much anymore. You're doing the studies. You're figuring out what these teams are looking like, and that's something we're going to have to see this week, whether or not it really applies to Winthrop, because now having so many players available at your disposal, having so many guys who can swap in and out, you don't really have a complete uniform picture of what you're going to be going up against. And, well, if they focus more on their own game over that offseason, I think it shouldn't be too much of a hurdle for them.
Yeah, so focus on themselves, make those adjustments, make those make your statements kind of known. We've already seen really rapid, I would feel like, improvements from a lot of the teams here so far in the split. We talked a lot about that Boise State and Ohio State game where Boise State now looks like a really competing force. Right. Now they're going to be the team you have to keep an eye out on. West Virginia looks like they've not faltered after losing out on one of their players, right? And being able to take that next step as well and continuing onwards, having that new roster in. And I think that's going to be the big thing here for Winthrop. We've been talking a lot about this Stony Brook roster. How is Winthrop going to play? One, losing Glyph, a very valuable member of this team, but two, also now having to kind of balance around having players that, well deservedly, mind you, are getting scouted, having opportunities to play for high levels in opposing regions like VCT, right? So how are you going to start to make adjustments out of the spit where you have to worry about players constantly being poached? You have to worry about not having your starting five necessarily for, and as well as that, having players that aren't necessarily in your starting five like they were in that last split. Ollie's now a substitute member. This roster is working with Moobs, Infiltrator, Strong Tall Guy, Fair, and Governor as their starting five, and we're only seeing, I believe, 2 of those here today. So these substitutes, they've been here for a while. You've said they could scout them like, oh, let's just bring in NRG, right? But does that mean they know how to work together as a unit? Does that mean they're going to be as competitive as that main Winthrop roster? You'd expect no, but at the same time, they're going to have to be able to take down the teams we've been highlighting so heavily throughout Division 1.
And I think Corrode's going to be a great place to go ahead and kind of really settle that. I mean, it's going to be the guaranteed map. It's looking right there in the middle. It's what Winthrop went ahead and selected, letting you know that, I mean, this is one of those maps that they're going to show testament of what this squad is capable of this season and kind of how they play together, how they kind of connect the lines between each other. I mean, that's going to be one of those maps that really kind of comes together because Split is so kind of scuffled. It's so, just a nitty and gritty right there towards the center, especially when it comes around to those site takes. I mean, it's very cohesive. It's very uniform. It's kind of really brought in all together, and more times than not where you maybe every here and there have a player kind of scrounged about. But I mean, Corrode's gonna be that map where I think Winthrop want to go ahead and show us, at least in the guaranteed first match, that hey, this is what we're working with. This is how this looks. The comp is going to be a little bit different depending on the map, but as it stands, it's a very kind of maze-like map that if we show we still had those connections, we still had those pinches, we still had those retakes, we still had those engages, we still had those flexes, we still had those rotates, everything coming together looking like it's exactly like what we saw from Winthrop last semester, knowing it's the same kind of staff available at their disposal. If they can mold them into that, they shouldn't have much of a difficulty.
Man, Winthrop really like starting off on the defense, really taking that pick for themselves. But yeah, we've seen actually a lot of Corrode already throughout this weekend. It was a pretty popular map. We saw it go fairly lopsided. We saw it be fairly contested, right? You're expecting it to be a one half dominated over the other, but then the question is, can it truly be, returned in that second half? Split we did get to see for a little bit there as well, and a lot of teams will have different agent selections and a different style they like to play for really both maps, as we saw one return in with a Yoru pick on Corrode, but then the other team stuck with that Waylay. We saw, difference of duelist opinions over towards Split. It is going to ultimately come down to what these players are more comfortable with. And one thing we've noted out of Stony Brook for quite a bit was they like to play that double duelist, especially on maps like Haven, which, yes, can be popular, having that Yoru, having that ISO, but they're doing that Yoru not necessarily alongside that ISO every time. They just like to play into a choice that creates a little bit more viability for map rotations, to create some, utility flushing information, as well as being able to close out some sightlines as a semi-initiator in the duelist slot. But we don't see that being opted for just yet here for Stony Brook. Instead, it's Winthrop bringing out Yoru on Strong Tall Guy. The Waylay is here for Fair. Jerk's been relegated away from a duelist position, is over on that Sky. Echo to the Astra, and Minsock is on the Chamber. So essentially, almost 3 duelists for this Winthrop roster, right? They have a very aggressive Sentinel out of that Chamber who can play up front in the face, will have the ability to rendezvous out of there. And Stony Brook have gone nearly the entire opposite path. Only the Clove, you could argue with that, having a little bit of their kit, having the viability to go one-on-one in confrontations and have that overheal after the fact. Instead, 0 actual duelists for this roster, right. And they're going very heavy on the Sentinel style of play.
And I mean, I can really appreciate it. I mean, it's so many players. When we look at the duelist, the Sentinel kind of transition we saw over time when it came into Valorant, initially you were always saying, put your best duelist, right there, obviously on the duelist spot. Put your best fraggers in that slot. And then it gets around to a point where, what if we just put the guys who are the best aimers on this position? They just hit the utility down. They don't have to freak out and press 13 buttons at the same time like a hero shooter. Just let them shoot their gun. Let them aim. And, well, going ahead and having less utility to work with, especially for Stony Brook on the defensive side, I mean, that's going to be a good look for him. But I'm really curious to see what it's going to look like here for Winthrop to kick things off, because obviously when you look at the likes you said, Jerk being now on that kind of sky, you have two new players kind of coming into the fair here, looking to see, you know, if they can take over that slot of what should be the primary and the secondary role of who was a prior duelist. So nice little kickoff here for Winthrop, 2 picks under their name, but Tonka T is exchanging exactly therefore. And even then, you got Mr. Majestic getting one more on top of it.
There it is. 3 players still up for Stony Brook. A full rush into the ace side is successful, and now it's just a matter of holding on to this post plant. Fair's going to be coming up from tower not too far away as Echo. Looks like Fair will rotate in to go through a main ramp, and Echo will join in alongside them, worried about the possibility of players moving through security, taking back control of defensive site, and getting into tower from behind. Thomas has been spotted. A great flick over there. Thomas has really no need to peek this, and that's a wise decision to make sure you can just have that extra little bit of elevation help from above to secure it from Big Tonka T themselves. Stony Brook will come away with that first round win. The rushes into the ace site, very successful for many a team here for a map like Split, but you can't do it every time, and we already see Stony Brook kind of testing their options here for round 2. Early peaks towards B, likely to be a more default when they start to pick up some better weapons to their hands.
Yeah, I mean, great takes as well. Going ahead and making that read, executing all the way up to heaven. I understand that site's going to be a little bit of a funnel for yourself, knowing the setup of what could be present there, and it's like they just knew it off rip, but even then still making sure to kind of do this, you know, attendance check that I like to call it in that round number 2. Not double downing onside that A, not looking to kind of see what's present there, and even then, just not really putting any players there at all besides Abel sitting back towards spawn if they want to go for anything crazy. They want to go through this middle of the map. They want to push up that B. They want to go ahead and say, all right, nobody's holding early garage kind of aggressively there. We got to look up towards mid. Nobody's sitting back towards vents to see if we're going to be pushing up or anything. But you know that guys are still going to be towards that B side, towards that middle. Just where will they be? And you know that Fair is now more than likely usually on that B side. So it's a fair assessment to make pretty early on, but even then still losing a player lets you know that you got to cue the go button somewhere, and having those 2 players down now, especially with Abel getting that pick, makes things look pretty potent to kind of push over right back towards A.
Well, fallback will be called into the A site. The whole team will now move this way, and it looks like Winthrop's kind of over expenditure towards the B site and early in the round towards A, and the constant rotates that have been made for this roster will not pan out to keep them, well, Stony Brook off of this objective for too much longer. Majestic will go and get that spike down, and it'll be a 3 versus 4 post plant scenario. The weapon that was dropped there towards Vending will not really be a point of contention. It was just recollected by Stony Brook to make sure that it was not allowed for Winthrop's hands. It is Sheriff's up to work with. And you have 2 players coming in from that main A-ramp side, where not the best spot to really sit in if you're Big Tonka T. Fair will have a great angle with that Sheriff. That's a weapon now collectible. Will need to be moved into a spot if you are the rest of Stony Brook to try to disallow that weapon to be grabbed. It won't be a problem. You'll move over your sky to get it. Fair, though, is continuing to go crazy with the Sheriff. Eventually get shut down, but you have still 2 players and a weapon collected by Janitor to work with, and you don't have enough ammo to hold on to it, and Majestic was making that a close call, despite a classic being the only thing firing at him from that range. Stony Brook will come away with the round win, but it's a loss in the credit economy as they got torn apart by this Winthrop defense on that retake.
I mean, even then, it didn't seem like the largest buy in the world on the behalf of Stony Brook in that last round. I mean, they had a couple Sheriffs already kind of coming into play, the Stingers as well. I mean, not really investing in those Spectres, those Bulldogs, those crazy weapons that you see a lot of teams like to force up in that second round to kind of preserve and bring over, because I think Stony Brook does have that respect for Winthrop, knowing that they can't really probably hold on to a lot of those, knowing that they don't have a singular player who could just run over the entirety of this team, where they were kind of playing a little bit more of an information game, because as I've said earlier, this team is very studious. They want to make sure they've done their homework. They want to make sure they check all the boxes before they do go for those full buys. And even then, I mean, sure, they had the cash to kind of invest into it, but logistically, you don't want to go for it here. Instead, you finally want to go on that B execute. You want to look to see what kind of player are holding things down. Make sure, hey, Fair pushed out a garage last time. Is Fair here this time? Will we run into him? There's Echo with the spray through, knowing the Cosmic is there. I mean, seeing these kinds of ticks, these kind of little bits of information is what's causing a nice little fight to unravel here. As a 2v2 is the conclusion of the scuffle to kick things off. But do you go ahead and really go back? I could see them rerouting into this, knowing all those weapons that are available to pick up.
Well, Majestic's in a great spot to try to work in alongside Big Tonka T. A slow push in as well from Staircase into Heaven. And Veyron has an angle at which they could try to get a fight up to Big Tonka, but no sightline is available, and it's just a matter of trying to suffocate out this back of B-side player in Cubby. Janitor, though, has no problem getting their third kill of the round. Majestic maybe overstays their welcome, and the Bandits in hand for Tonka T. They're going to throw down the grab and attempts to keep them there, but a great covering fire held, and it will be Winthrop coming away with the round win to get the expected 2-to-1 split you see in the standard mold of VAL, as we like to call it, for the start of every single map and really every half as it goes forward.
I mean, beautiful attempt coming out there from Stony Brook. I mean, so long as things line up just a little bit more, say if we get, you know, Hayron pushing up a little bit more, that chamber gets picked off, gun passed off to Tonka T. It's just making sure to have those setups available, not overexerting yourself. And even Winthrop is exercising that on the defense in terms of retaking on a site, or even more so holding, which you already know is having an emphasis towards. But once that spike went down, I mean, that was just kind of done and dusted. So no one had that site works out. Even then, seeing that the eco went pretty darn well for him. Let's just try it one more time when we have guns. I mean, maybe we have a little bit more of a mid-execute, come down from Heaven, because it seemed like obviously with Tonka T able to slip through the cracks there. There's going to be a bit of a weakness and exploit, but still, you got to see if anything's given to you relatively early. Just by the side of Winthrop wanting to get one of these fights. You can already see up there towards the back over number 3 on your mini-map. Also big, strong, tall guy looking for, you know, what could be maybe a fight here and there. But, I mean, expecting maybe 1 or 2, you're going to run into 3 and possibly 4 if we get that kind of recollection, that tucking your tail, running through those sewers and back towards the mid.
Seekers will go out to give information for where these players are. An attempted heal onto Gunny doesn't go the way that Thomas was expecting, and it is a slaughter here in mid at this alley. Hugh controls mid, controls the wolf. When it comes to the map, a split may not matter at all. Winthrop disallow any movement forward. It's a brick wall, and Stony Brook will break their nose flat against it and let this round tally tie up to a 2-2 split, and they're stuck back in the same spot they really were for the start of round 3. No credits to their name, not much they can truly work with, and they'll need to try to piece up as much as they did in the round before with worst weapons, right? Of that eco push here into B site to try to knock down a couple of Winthrop players, because if they let the credits get out of hand for that roster, Winthrop's the type of team that will never lose sight of that end goal and will constantly have, you know, variables, constantly have utility, constantly have even the ultimates. They'll play the macro economy the further this goes on with this aggressive push here towards B in that frag. They want to gain control of this. They want to play that macro economy.
Can you really blame them? Even then, Veyron, knowing outlaw in hand, got to have a secondary to work with in case the push comes through. Even then, if it's sneaky or aggressive, and finding a second here to go ahead and knock these Stony Brook numbers down. So the 3 remaining players, you got 2 heading over towards the A side, but I mean, they're not really going to stand very long either. Knowing that strong, tall guys there to go ahead, get the cleanup, find the dimensional drift to be online for whenever you really need it for a retake possibly, but this isn't the round you're going to do it, because it doesn't even seem like Stony Brook's going to find that plan.
Well, Majestics alone has spotted STG, but they will lose their life instantly afterwards, and it'll be a flawless result for Winthrop. The round before was nearly flawless, just the same, but Stony Brook have just not really found an answer, and yes, necessarily just yet for their attack. And we're going to have to hope to see a little bit more of that back and forth. 3 in a row given over to Winthrop. You do see splits tend to be fairly divided, Dallas, right? You do expect to see one side over the other, but you're expecting it to almost be the offense capable of just kind of capsizing the pressure that defenses fail to really be capable of holding on to for this map. It's very difficult to contest these objectives, and if you do so, most of the time it comes down to having to be a single-man army in lockdown positions, and we saw that be the way for success in round 4, but I don't want to see that be the only way Stony Brook fall. I'd like to see that come down to more of dividing up for defaults, trying to get into angles, needing to rotate out. Getting first bloods, though, is the perfect way to start off a round. It's Gunny here towards Veyron. Thomas through the smoke as well to take down STG, and finally Winthrop been dissolved away from this mid-control. This alley is theirs for the taking.
Yeah, very influential skirmishes through the middle. I mean, and we're going to see this probably every single round. It really just comes down to who can find those sprays through the smokes, and we saw it towards that B garage area during that last round where Veyron found 2 before it ended up dissipating. But even around like that, you see the sprays. Thomas ends up finding 1, and that's just free numbers there from the side of Stony Brook. And especially when you see that number first one cut down, Veyron awkwardly not able to kill the Trailblazer there. It just creates this kind of domino effect where things just don't work out, and we should see Stony Brook find their third. I mean, they've grabbed the pistol, the one after. They gave themselves this breathing room. They gave themselves this safety net. They can take those 3 afterwards, because so long as you win this one, you could leave all your players alive by the end of it, have a flawless, and carry them on to the next where it looks like nothing ever happened.
Well, no way for really Janitor to move into this one. I think they're aware of that fact. They'll go ahead and run away from all the contention from Stony Brook. This will be a pseudo-flawless round. I mean, it's essentially flawless, for not a single player has been lost for their side, but they want to try to deal with Janitor. Like I said, if you don't knock the credits out of Winthrop's hands, you'll continuously find them to have weapons in their hands and be a threat to your side. No real breather round that is an eco. No real breather round that is only having to deal with a thrifty. And you can even hardly call those rounds breathers when it's against a roster like Winthrop, no matter if it's the main roster or a couple of stand-in or, substitute players coming along those lines. They are a threat because this program is a threat, and they have the staff and more. The players alongside them to teach them, right, Dallas, to make sure that they're always there. But it'll be a Stony Brook round when everyone will survive there towards the end, even Janitor for the side of Winthrop. And you'll see an operator be purchased, a heavy choice for Winthrop, but we saw just how early they were getting kills with the Outlaw a couple rounds before out of Aaron's hands. You're expecting them to attempt to do the exact same thing. This time, though, not towards Garage. Instead, they're gambling here towards A main, and no one is there for Stony Brook.
I mean, it's going to be good looks there for the likes of Stony Brook if they do end up managing these first couple picks again. I mean, you can already see the shrouded step coming out from Abel, looking to go up top, looking to maybe find a little bit of sprays, because they know that these players are going to be allocating themselves inside of these vents. But, I mean, nobody overexerting themselves. Winthrop had it happen the last turn, had it happen in the last round, but they lost a couple players for nearly nothing, and well, they don't want that to repeat once more. So already pushing things up, getting yourself into heaven, knocking out a player there towards the be heaven, and having a guy allocated in the back. Can it be Mr. Majestic again? Just cleaning up shop. Winthrop left one singular player, and honestly, this is going to be probably another save, if I'm being quite honest with you.
Yeah, it's an operator in hand. Why waste the 4,900 credits you had to spend for this? Just play the macro economy. Big Tonka T will tap the ult orb here inside Garage, just waiting to see if anyone does pressure for this. They'll let Majestic have this. They're one pip away from the Seekers all over again. This will be the second set of Seekers already for Stony Brook, mind you, within about to be 7 rounds, right? So this is a player who's been on top of the game so far for Stony Brook, even though it is only an even 3-on-3 right now, expected to fall to 4 for Stony Brook here. It is very impressive what this one player has been capable of doing. You can already note Stony Brook are starting to wrap around here towards tower. Aaron is trapped down below, inside of ropes, still working to at least survive for the time being. You can feel that pressure go through. One player going towards ramp. Gunny will lose their life. They'll go ahead and use the not dead yet to make matters worse. There's the cover from Abel, and it'll be another flawless round here for Stony Brook with all 5 players still surviving. And you'll make sure that fact is known, and you'll even collect the operator to make it that much more worth your troubles. Great dissolution again against this Winthrop defense, and a lot of this is coming off of Abel acting as a duelist in the way that they're capable of closing the distance with their shrouded steps, which is so weird to think of as a controller, but honestly, if it's ever a controller to do so, it's going to be an Omen every single time.
No, we saw that shift, a while back. Within the past year and a half of even at the highest level of play in the professional scene, knowing that still we see these guys like, obviously, Jet Dash, you're running through every single trap on the map. You're tripping every trip, you're going ahead and kind of letting every single queue kind of go off, and all this utility just ring every single bell. Meanwhile, with the Omen, you have your best fragger inside the lobby, or seemingly in the position to kind of push forward. You have a blind, pseudo flash, and you just completely bypass everything instead. But exchange is already happening very early here in the middle of the map once more. Thomas managed to find that resurrection with the wall to give it cover, but that was nothing but a ruse. As the shots still go through, you're elevated and beyond it, and well, that player is still down. But STG manages to get out of dodge, but not for free on 10 HP. And knowing that maybe A is going to be the hit here, because obviously that wall in play, they're not going to have a split push for that B side anymore.
But go ahead and throw a grab net to try to keep players honest in their escape out from security. You're still worried about that Yoru who's down to 1 HP. Janitor's on site. You know this player needed to come over here to get that regrowth, but not able to be active. Gunny will pull out that shorty and finish the job. STG, Dimensional Drift, getting tons of information, giving that teammates everything they can for that intel. Now hoping to stabilize this push. The deadlock wall locking down the entirety of that tower pursuit, and Winthrop don't really want to peek into that one. Tour de Force is out for Veyron, gets a great connection, but Gunny gets two, makes it a special, and it's a 1v1 now for STG. 10 HP versus Gunny, and Gunny just needs to hit a single round and does. 4K for the Clove. We highlighted the other controller, and Gunny says, it's my time to shine. I want my Not Dead Yet back in my hands again, and they're just 3 pips away from it.
I mean, surprisingly, not even closer than what I was expecting. I mean, I was expecting maybe 6 to 7. I mean, it's just one of those things where, I mean, the guy went off in the last round, and you're expecting to be so aggressive to grab a couple of those ult pips in the process, but that's just not really the case there. Found the one in the last round, and even then found 4 in this one. But going forward now, I mean, it makes sense to put Gunny on this role. Make sure to have one of those controller players. I like seeing those pseudo-duelists. Duelist as an outright position being more utility-based, as we've seen kind of the death of Jet and the kind of the collection of Waylay and the collection of, you know, Neon inside of our arsenal to be playing with to kind of go and facilitate these pushes. Where a guy, even if they can't aim, you can just throw them out there to be enough of a distraction. While your controllers, your initiators, your guys who have this utility, they are the skirmishers. They are the ones wanting to fight. I mean, you can see here out of Abel and Gunny alone, just pressing W, finding every single kill successfully, and I mean, not either one of them being in a duelist position.
Yeah, we've seen the kind of shift away. Janitor's the last one standing, not for long, just gets there first to stop Stony Brook from going flawless. We've kind of seen that shift away for duelists for quite a while. Way back when, the old glory days of Valorant, right, Dallas? If you want to have, you know, tinted glasses for nostalgia. It's just Jet tailwind dash into a cloud burst, right? That was really it. It was just so your exciting. Duelist is there for sightline separation, and if they don't shut down the duelist when they go for that dash into their cloud burst, guess what? They'll be a fragger and they're able to contend. Now it is anti-utility. That is what your duelist role has typically become for a lot of teams. They are anti-utility. Maps like Corrode, which guess what, folks? We're heading into next. The Waylay double dashes through, immediately recalls back. They've gotten rid of so much of the utility that would be there. Either it's a Vice or a Viper that would be placed on those sites. They've guaranteed, you know, 1, information, 2, to force and flush players away from the utility that's now been expunged, that they can no longer sit in safety behind. It's so valuable to play duelists that have the capability to, 1, use their own utility, and then 2, be anti-utility. And you're seeing the stray away from, I have to be a gunner first and foremost. And Stony Brook have just said, well, if the utility is really the important aspect, what if we just ignore the utility with Shrouded Steps from the Oven and just have that much more utility elsewhere to work with, having 2 Sentinels? If we get onto a site, we're pretty much unstoppable, and that's been a lot of the way their offense has been working and flowing so well together. That's given them now twice the score tally of Winthrop, sitting 6-3.
I mean, that's just one of those things where I feel like all those pseudo-duelists, I mean, they just do a so much better job. And that's why I call them pseudo-duelists, because I feel like we should have different role names now, more like skirmishers, because you're duelists for your fighters, but now everybody else can do it. But unfortunately, we're not going to see Majestic doing it around like this, with Veyron picking things up almost instantaneously. But, I mean, seeing it, Clove, I believe, in my humble opinion, is the strongest agent in the game. I mean, able to instantaneously heal, almost like Reyna, but not even having any kind of information to give that trace like the heal from Reyna occurs. Being able to smoke, not only when you're alive with the double, but able to do it from the grave. And even then, having a second life, a potential kind of distraction like an Empress would. It's just insane to see what this agent does, but, well, it's not really going to possibly doing much in this round alone, because Stony Brook are looking pretty slow to the push. Obviously, you have Thomas holding things over towards that garage section of the map where that first kill took place. You're expecting maybe somebody to wrap through, play more aggressively, take the fight there, but knowing that guys are going to be stationed there no matter what, they're looking to go ahead and double swing this and maybe find something, but Veyron is not having it. Another kill to his name, maybe head hunting once more for a third, but it's going to be Janitor cleaning things up inside the garage and letting Stony Brook know if you want to push, you got to do it somewhere else.
It's an eco round as well for Winthrop, mind you. Like, they came in with nothing, and Veyron has made this a very doable round. Janitor as well to secure that last one is like, it's icing in the proverbial cake. This is a team that's been able to go so far beyond what was expected. against the Stony Brook roster that prior to that point was kind of walking all over them. Time, though, will be tight to go and get the spike down, or even over there and available if you're able. You have to get dropped down into sight quickly to get this spike down. Shrouded Step to move over towards default. I believe they've gotten the time to be capable of doing it. And it will be tight. There it is, 0.3 seconds left. Janitor in still. Veyron down in garage. Oh, and Abel missing the Shrouded Step, clipping it against the post board there where all the flyers across from it. Winthrop will secure an eco round, break through this Stony Brook side, and maybe it found an early formula. Maybe it is early aggression, early contention, not hiding passively within that middle alley that is going to find them more wins than losses in the way that they've seen the last few pan out for themselves.
I feel like a lot of your gambles are kind of really put and invested on Veyron here. I mean, obviously we saw in the middle of the map, I mean, once that guy went ahead and got picked off, the rest of the team just kind of followed suit. Need the operator in play. I mean, this dude is an aimer, and that's one of those things that I said earlier, talking about these Sentinels, what they're supposed to do. Just get the setup, man, and especially with Chamber more than anybody else. I mean, just go ahead, place that TP down, get towards the back, make sure you cause yourself a bit more of a problem, maybe find an initial blood, and after that, I mean, what are you doing? You're just holding sights once more, letting them know that, hey, if you want to go to B again, you're going to be going up against this probably arguably our best aimer, or who should be considering the role, and well, you go next or try it again and have another player go down, because that's his entire job. It's the only angle that you just didn't clear and back out from.
A lot of early fights still in mid. It's Stony Brook trying to take a high level of approach, still having SGG not too far away. Veyron will have to rotate over to the sky for the regrowth to get their HP back online, and Winthrop will still have all 5 players with good HP remaining. The question is Stony Brook going to be able to break through this middle, or are they going to have to go for a split push here towards the B site with how 3 players moving through garage in an attempt to try to take down any player currently sitting down on site? Guiding Light will go out and use the paranoia to try to get rid of SGG's line of sight. Echo and SGG, now the only 2 players on site here for Winthrop, and SGG's not been cleared, and Echo still standing, gets 2 before falling, and SGG may not be far away from doing the exact same thing. Fair knocks down Gunny. It's just 1 now remaining with Thomas falling, and Big Tonka T has the world in front of them, able to deal with SGG. 1 player through alley. They are still active on side, and you weren't ready for Janitor watching top of stairs there in heaven. Winthrop take another one in a row, and they're 1 round away from tying us up going into the next half.
I mean, just need to find a couple here, and that's all they've done so far. Even then, if they win or lose this one, I mean, just managing to get those 2, that string of 3 was an absolute saving grace for them early inside this game, because, I mean, Stony Brook had been putting strings together once they found those rounds, and thankfully for Winthrop here, no matter what, they can't find another string to play with. They just go ahead, once this round, win or loss, whatever the case is, you're into the next half, and, well, you're putting Stony Brook in a situation where should arguably be their weaker half, and they've still managed to hit 6. Keep in mind, this is what this team is accomplishing with 0 duelists, by the way, but Caster Curse comes into play, Gunny gets knocked down, and you're just looking for the rest of the squad to kind of make up for it.
Janitor locking down the A site. Elizabeth Veyron sitting up there on catwalk, watching, able to spot Abel using their Shrouded Step to get back into the spacing there, and we'll deal with them with a Tasmanian Tiger, though Janitor still ends up losing their life in that fight. Execution is done for the Annihilation. It actually does manage to connect against Fair. This is a great distraction, you would hope, to maybe make sure all of Winthrop have to shoot down this teammate, but it doesn't happen, and instead a flank from SGG down through main knocks down 2 players for Stony Brook. Then it's a 2 versus 3. Yes, a post-plant scenario. Veyron still with an operator up in hand on catwalk within tower, but 2 players still an unknown force working through main, and a distance they have to crawl through. Smoke will be layered in. They're actually going to use this closer towards sight, as it does seem Winthrop have already executed past that initial layering of utility. Abel double flash. Great shorty shot from STG, and a combo from Macro just removes Stony Brook from this half and makes the 6-6 going into the next.
Yeah, I mean, shell spread just lining up perfectly there for STG, but even then still, you had 2 more players available to go ahead and just follow through with that take, and especially in the last round, you're not concerned about it. You just want the result and Winthrop find it. So a beautiful exercise for what Winthrop was capable of in terms of bringing that back, not from the grave per se, but making sure to keep themselves relevant. Because, I mean, looking at those 4 rounds back-to-back from Stony Brook, that's one of the longer strings you'll see against Winthrop, funny enough. And, well, they found it right there towards the mid-round, and you were thinking that, hey, they could possibly just close this thing out. 5 or 6, just kind of get yourself a little bit more. But that eco round just completely shut things down and gave Winthrop so much to work with following forward. But seeing Stony Brook now, I talked about it earlier. I mean, just around prior, seeing that they had the double Sentinel, they have 0 duelists. This should be the half that they look very, very strong on. But they got to make sure they get the pistol round once more to kind of really give themselves a bit of an elevation to work with.
Yep, Stony Brook have Sentinels, they have controllers, they have value, they have a lot of utility that should be good for shutting down Winthrop, but at the same time, their value was kind of lost in that first half to the gunfights. Winthrop were outgunning them. Winthrop were finding more value in their picks and their positionings. And because of that, the shift won't be 100% in favor for Stony Brook despite their agent selection. SGG working it alongside Echo, real close to push through to Abel. Great execution for one. You have to win a 2v1 there if you're able, and you do, because now, even if Big Tonka T refrags you and they die immediately afterwards, the team still is an even 3-on-3 in this retake here towards site. Janitor will get that spike down. 2 players will come from heaven. 1 player will come from outside alley, and Gunny will have to deal with Fair really close. The Frenzy's a good connector, and it gets 2. The second flick to Janitor, really a necessity in the wild swing to Veyron. Secure Stony Brook yet another pistol round win. The expected bonus you want to see afterwards still on the docket. It came for them in the first half, but after that came the problems when Winthrop started to key back into things.
And that's the funny thing about the Frenzy. It is such a feast or famine gun. I mean, there was times where we saw it just be a menace, where it was an easy round 1 buy for so many teams, and then Riot put it right in its place. And every now and again, you'll see those rounds where you're thinking, oh my God, this thing is completely broken. But it's just one of those things, especially that second kill that came underway, the just single random spray to the head. That was just one of those points where you're saying, hey, that's just that having the bullets and just having the damage done from everybody else. It really starts to add up, and especially for a gun like that, it should be nothing but a free cleanup. But looking at things so far, having the pistol round for Stony Brook, I talked about this half, talking these first 2 rounds. We've seen, though, Winthrop able to completely demolish these rounds where buys are coming into play. When Stony Brook finds the first pick, the Bucky is still in play for STG here. And I mean, being that Yoru, he's one of the better agents besides Raze, I would say, who can really make use of this, as the first one and the second have already given him a reward of a Guardian as an upgrade, and the rest of the team is pushing through Garage.
Oh, they're getting the ult orbs as well. They're playing the entire game, thinking rounds ahead and ensuring that there really is nothing that Stony Brook can do about this. Big Tonka T gets a good execution to STG. They only had 30 to 40 HP remaining, so it wasn't too big of a problem, but Fair sees just enough of a glimpse of now both of the remaining players to deal with them with that Outlaw and secure Winthrop that break of the mold. The 2-1, no, 1-1 start now for Winthrop, and they'll have momentum heading into the 3rd round of the half, holding on to weapons they were kind of pushing through in force against Stony Brook, and this offense is pounding the rock. You're not only going to continue to give Fair that Outlaw in Dallas, you're now handing Veyron another sniper, and we saw what they did with that in that first half, and they're about to do it all over again. Yes, on the opposite side of the pitch, but still an effective force when you are a Sentinel, locking down an angle and making sure Stony Brook cannot poke for information when they're already going to be gun dry and really utility dry for this round.
Yeah, I mean, that's all Winthrop's game plan is here. Just going ahead, completely just giving a drought of information on either side of the map, and just forcing those 2 duelists right at the middle to kind of give that aggression, just completely facilitate a nightmare on Stony Brook's half of the field once the kind of go button is actually pressed. But we're not seeing too much of that because all the resources are available at their disposal at this point. It's just more so working what you got. And you got a pretty good bit of Outlaws, Guardians, working for these longer ranges. But Veyron pushing towards the middle, I mean, obviously not see it any other kind of way. I mean, he's over towards Garage on this kind of round, but just lining up towards the center, getting adjusted that lineup when it came around to the defense, swap it around on offense, get that back up there, or even more so stationed as a little bit of a flank watch because, well, you're a Sentinel and that's your job. So seeing how things go, Winthrop finding some good damage. Stony Brook players can't really get too much damage put on. The guys that are remaining, Thomas can find one, but that may be all you can really find with SCG pushing into your base.
Yeah, I tried to go ahead and collect an Outlaw, but unfortunately, even with it being empty, there was really no chance if it wasn't. Too many players there for Winthrop still standing, and they'll secure themselves yet another one. Yeah, it's still a 2-1 split, but really a 1-2. Stony Brook faltering where they aren't expected to, and Winthrop, despite carrying plenty of weapons forward out of that round, will still opt to go ahead and go for some bigger purchases and go heavy, knowing that Stony Brook will have everything in front of them. Every time we've seen a team win a spree of rounds besides the first two in that first half, it's been 3 and more. Winthrop will have to try to continue that mold here, and if they get this third, it feels like a fourth as expected afterwards, because Stony Brook will be back into an eco scenario where the credits just aren't there, and defensively, it's very easy to topple a house of cards that doesn't even sit on a stable base, and I think they're very aware of that if you're Winthrop. But it's first blood, Big Tonka T. You're out for the count here for your Waylay, and you're knocking off yet another huge peg piece for the board of Winthrop's offense, losing out on their controller.
I mean, Veyron still stationing over here towards the B side, expecting maybe somebody to kind of start to go on the rotate, but able to be holding strong here, because why would you rotate? Your team is doing a phenomenal job towards the middle and over A. I mean, that right half of the map looks like nothing but a death trap with those two at the moment. So there's absolutely no reason to budge. The guy's got it held down, and even then with this last player remaining, Janitor, if he dies, I mean, it comes down to a flawless here for Stony Brook on their first buy. So it looks like a possibly beautiful result and a beautiful conclusion as well, as they do end up finding that coming to fruition, find their 8th round, manage to carry everything over. It really just comes down to what Winthrop has kind of in the back pocket to make sure that this round goes a little bit differently. And with the buys being in the hands of the majority players, Veyron not having that tour de force to play with, more than likely just going for the headhunter. He hasn't really had that much of an influence when it comes around to the actual push anyway. So you're not really stressing this round too much. I think they go full-fledged here. Pop the ultimate, get in on a side. Make sure you can get some kind of emphasis of what your team is capable of doing and show them that you mean business. And the ace, I think, will be a little bit heavier hitter, but, I mean, honestly, they feel much more comfortable with Veyron in that lineup, kind of sitting back towards that B garage section and having that trip station towards that kind of middle market area. So, I mean, it makes sense. Can you do it? And with first blood underway, they're on pace to do so.
I absolutely love that attempted push there for Winthrop. I don't know if you noticed it in the moment, but you send out your Waylay double dash, you throw the hinder towards Big Tonka T and the exit out from sight, as it is Winthrop just tearing through the majority of Stony Brook here. Abel's able to scrape down 2 before falling, but it is the expected result after that really cascading finish from Winthrop early with those kills. But they sent out there, they double dash through, they send the hinder, and they immediately recall backwards in the gap that's left while Fair is in the recall. The moment they disappear and move back in time, STG has sent out the gate crash, pops back in the same spot that that player just exited from and was trying to capitalize on the hinder. The call was made by Fair. I connected with my utility, and STG says, "I'd bet," and attempts to go in for that frag. Beautiful wombo combo from Winthrop, and that is a well thought out and coordinated effort, but Stony Brook's player just barely ekes their way through the alley before it's a problem, and the problem continues when Winthrop now have a player kill, opening frag, and a free A-site bar that tower hold that's already smoked off, ready to be kind of held onto by this Winthrop push.
Yeah, I mean, just in the moment's notice, the entire round feels like it's over here. Because a Winthrop, when they go, they go. I mean, plain and simple. They let you know, and they have done exactly that in this round. Seeing Veyron go ahead, have a nice little setup there with that TP. Look at maybe those shots and play up towards heaven. Doesn't really work out, but immediately, hey, why not just go ahead, get out, facilitate the wrap, and hello, Thomas. I'm right behind you. I just met your teammate a second ago in a completely different avenue of the map.
No idea where that rendezvous even is, right? Like, that is what Chambers can do, viability and versatility for positioning. And they even widened the Chamber rendezvous TP range after completely crippling the agent for a very long period of time there. Rightfully deserved, mind you, Dallas. I don't think any of us, especially talent, look fondly back at the days of having to see a Chamber in every single map, no matter the meta,
Anywhere
no matter
on the
what
map,
it was.
that was a problem.
Oh,
that was
it was horrible time. I even refuse to call him a sentinel. He just was a duelist. He was what Yoru is now, right? Where instead of having to lay out the gate crash, you just placed a rendezvous and then you were good and could play around and then pick it back up.
Chamber speed, dude, that thing felt like a vandal.
It was horrible time to be alive, but Man, oh man, Valorant is in a new heyday of utility consumption, and this is where you're seeing that value, or hopeful value, of not having the duelist if you're Stony Brook, but it just hasn't been panning out. An eco round for them, pushing forward, trying to take down Winthrop. Janitor's completely trapped, but Veyron's got gorgeous covering fire, and they come away with that extra frag on the not dead yet for the player of Gunning, and they'll maintain that player advantage, but look what Abel is. Trigger Discipline gets the first, low HP on the second, hits the head but not required. Winthrop are bleeding, but Veyron is out of his mind for this Winthrop roster to secure yet another.
Everybody else is dead. All I gotta do, surely doesn't have util now. So it's just basically we're on even grounding here. I'm a guy without utility who's all about aiming. He's supposed to worry about utility and aiming. Surely add the leg up, and well, Veyron, you most definitely do. But your team does as well, at least in a one-man lead in terms of the roster that you're working with. Is you want to run over to this A site. But keep in mind that man lead could go down, considering Stony Brook do have a resurrection to play with. It'd be an interesting call to see whether or not we actually do see Thomas want to go for this pick and who their selection could be, because you have an entire map of guys to work with so long as you can win this match against Veyron in the center. That's it. I'm questioning it. I'm curious.
They don't do it? What?
No.
Thomas makes a weird decision not to resurrect. Round the corner is Echo. Maybe a question of if you'd even have time to do so with how much, was forced to be banked there in mid. They were worried they maybe wouldn't have had the ability to rotate in, but honestly, not going for that resurrect costs Stony Brook yet another round win. It'll be 11 in Winthrop's favor, and the rounds, well, there's a possible only 2 remaining if Winthrop take the both of these. We could already be at match point with a victory here for them. And keep in mind, this was Stony Brook's map pick, and then we're heading over to Corrode, a map that Winthrop was putting numbers up on against a titan of a team like Maryville to start off last split.
Let's play.
Well, it's not even that point yet. There's still time for Stony Brook to kind of get things rolling here. They clearly have a bit of a denial going here with the deadlock wall in play, but even then with all these ultimates on hand, you're going to see them go ahead and just be at least have one of them thrown out. Issue is that Annihilation is a bit questionable considering how many players are there. That Cocoon's going to get ripped through with all those weapons in the hands of Winthrop. So see how things are going. Gunny kicking things off, finding one, finding a second, but getting traded out in the process. This is the round where if you see anything coming their way, it should be Stony Brook. They need to make sure to not only save their game by getting this round, but they got to save these weapons in the process. And Thomas makes sure to maintain that trajectory.
That's a Vandal. That's a headshot kill instantly, but unfortunately for STG, Thomas gets the better end after the fact. Both players tapping the head. Winthrop left with half the player count, and Stony Brook's Thomas will go ahead and say maybe this is the round to use this resurrection. But just like we saw early on, Dallas, the moment the resurrection is popped, that player is instantly executed. Veyron now has their second shot with the Tour de Force. This one to Big Tonka T inside Cubby. This player eviscerated. You'll have Abel working their way up ropes. Standard tries to capitalize as they're still trying to climb through with that audio cue. But unfortunately, no success to be found, and Veyron will be the last player standing in the 1v3. 2 players up inside tower. That is a near miss. My goodness, could you imagine what could have come from that? But Stony Brook get their 9th round win, stopping the hemorrhaging that has been this Winthrop spree of round wins in a row. 5 so far in this half. And it will be Stony Brook finally getting their feet underneath them in hopes to recover and get their way on their map pick to match point first.
I mean, yes, saving those guns going to be huge for them, but I mean, even then more so we see Winthrop, and what these ecos could do for them, but even then they still not actually on an eco buy. They had so many strings of rounds put in front of them, preluding that round, so seeing they still have the guns to play with, it kind of leads me to worry for what Winthrop's going to look like in the next round afterwards, because Stony Brook, obviously, I think they're a little bit more scared of Winthrop's eco than they are their full actual buys, because Veyron's always stationed up with that operator. He's never really pushing with a Vandal or any other kind of gun, kind of getting a little bit tricky with his plays and his arsenal, so it seems a little bit more kind of static to what we're typically used to seeing, knowing what this guy can really accomplish when you put him in the middle of the fray. So as things go, though, Stony Brook talking about this double sentinel, seeing the kind of holes, the kind of setups they got to have. They put all of it everywhere in the map except for right there through the middle, because the only thing you have is, well, that wall that was up towards that mail, but now is dissipated by the trail seekers.
very interested to see Winthrop finally have a player that we can call a true dedicated opper, right? Like somebody who will be wielding that sniper offense or defense, you know, rain or sun. They're going to bring out this weapon,
Beautiful.
and it's worked very well for Veyron, but unfortunately in this round, Big Tonka T was crouched. The shot goes wildly over the head, and in that same spree, another connection, this one towards
30
A
seconds
site,
left.
puts Winthrop now at a 2-player disadvantage, and it's Stony Brook still remaining all 5. Gunny working it still back behind screen on site, a player in security. Connections for Winthrop up above in heaven on B. Fair has a single lick of HP, and I think Big Tonka T is aware of that fact and tries to go for the classic right click, but Fair is running away from dodge, and Gunny is standing still, expecting them to have to force to go for the spike plant due to time constraints, and the A site rotate falls apart for Winthrop, and the execution they fake towards B means nothing. A timeout will be called, and Winthrop second guessing, looking at an eco in front of them. This very well could reach and equalize at 11-11 for these two rosters, and there's still anyone's game for who gets match point first.
Yeah, I mean, eco round coming out here from Winthrop, so obviously planning for this one, but a little bit more for the next, understanding what kind of gameplay they can go with here. Just probably one of those quick calls to the playbook to say, hey, this one in eco looks like one of those kind of press W, maybe find something to slip through the cracks. I mean, just more so evaluate what Stony Brook has been doing and what they can give to you early on to really facilitate this. But problem with that is, I could see them definitely throwing Gunny at Winthrop and just seeing what he can do in a round like this. Having the not dead yet available, this guy's going to have not 1 life but 2, and in that previous round, seeing how many he knocked down, that's just one of those things you can't really account for. Obviously, you can think of utility where it's going to be pre-plays, where the cutoffs are going to happen, where you can go ahead and kind of pre-allocate stuff to, just compensate for any possible variables. But one guy just going insane, not really much you can do about that, especially if you end up finally killing him. Obviously, there's a reason Gunny is on this exact agent. He has the second chance. He's going to find these kills. He's going to come back from the grave once that's managed to be accomplished and just continue to bring that rain. And well, on a round like this, if you can manage to save that for the next one to guarantee that map point, or better yet, make it look a lot more doable. I mean, Stony Brook, I think whether or not that yellow border is in play by the end of this round tells us everything we know for what could be the result of this map.
Absolutely. Push through for Winthrop. B site in through garage. They'll go for a split 2-3 through mid, with the viability still to rotate your sky with that spike back towards garage. You can see them kind of hesitating and lapping between the two sides. The Waylay goes for the double dash. STG wanting to have the crossover, but that just gets not enough of that buckshot through, despite the right click at that distance. And it'll be Stony Brook coming through. Pretty much flawless. They did lose one. They used the not dead yet. And eventually you will also lose Abel in that process, but credits, I don't think, are going to be a major consistent problem for Stony Brook heading into this next round, despite how back and forth this has been. You will have guns if you're Winthrop. You will have guns if you're Stony Brook. The problem is only one ultimate is available for either side. The Cosmic Divide, which has not been an effective thing used at all so far on this map, and the From the Shadows, which effectively for defense just means you already have to give up control over a site or make an early gamble for a rotate if required to use it to try to assist, and even then it could be a bait from Winthrop to get it out of you.
I mean, it's being used for post plant, like cutting off angles, like say when you're defusing on A, you cut off heaven there. I mean, you're cutting down some angles, it's doing something, but Tonka T can't really do anything in this round so far, as we already see him going ahead and dying to this big spray that occurs to the middle. Gunny, the player that I talked about in the last round, not having the not dead yet because it was burned to just manage to keep numbers at an advantage of at least 2 in the last round. So it's not available here when I feel like that probably would have been a much more optimal time to pop it, so you have some more time for the rest of your team to kind of maneuver in, take those fights, and worst case scenario, you push out, maybe get 1 to 2 more. But Stony Brook, speaking of 2, they only have that many remaining in the 2v3 situation. The Cosmic Divide isn't in play. The From the Shadows is, but that's not really something you're going to use unless you hear a rotation, maybe to go ahead and get on the A site. But you're the sole player holding B, and you find your first. There's 2 more just running about through that garage, going ahead and giving all the information that, hey, flash on hand, it's sticking out towards heaven. Abel is present, but he is dinged up.
Yeah, that's a very necessary rotate out of there.
left.
Get the regrowth from your teammate and try to play for this. Spotted, though, is STG. Knows they're going to be rounding this spin. More likely than not, from the shadows will be used to get likely towards garage. No, back of sight. Pressure in. Down goes Majestic. And Abel was left alone on site with Janitor just waiting for their chance to pounce for that frag. Winthrop will be the first team to reach match point in this series, and they're doing it on Stony Brook's map pick. And Stony Brook haven't had a great answer for rounds like this that get torn apart by single players of Winthrop.
And even the Majestic doesn't really have much of a buy here, does manage to get at least from the teammate, because kind of getting that operator kind of concerned me a little bit. And even then, still just seeing it concerns me in general, knowing that this guy has been a huge skirmisher, more than just kind of line up Andy, just kind of a clothesline type player. So knowing that even then, when you're playing in this kind of position, but you're holding down the middle, sure, you're giving great information to your team saying they're not coming here. You need to be on that B site. You need to be lining things up. You need to be in the middle of the fray. So Dimensional Drift comes through. Information known to say, hey, he's going up towards the middle. Thomas makes the call, he's moving towards head. So it has to be a much bigger commit over towards B. And even then, still, the slow comes out to effectively guarantee that kill. But what happens to the guys on site? It's good exchanges so far. Stony Brook for 2. It's down to a 2v2. On site, can Gunny save it? Tonka King gets the first. And he gets the second to make 3 for the round. A 12 for Stony Brook. And an OT in play.
This is the thing we've been waiting for, Dallas, so long in Div 1. Naps that are truly back and forth. Overtimes that really determine, arguably, this could be the determining factor for the way this series plays out, right? Stony Brook, if they're losing on their map pick, imagine what that's going to turn into for Winthrop over on Corrode and the way that they're going to play that one. Map 3 may not even be on the docket for Stony Brook if it turns the wrong way. And this is a team that we've said they finally fell into their own throughout the entirety of last split. They kind of had fallen back to a spot we felt like they had belonged. The team had constantly worked towards. They didn't improve, but they just started to realize where they sat. Into that standard, the standard versus surprise. Right now, I'm not seeing the same standard of play we saw from the last semester. A lot of sacrificial lambs on these pushes, a lot of sacrificial lambs on defenses, angles that are held by players that have no right to be doing so and paying the price for it. And yet, they still are able to force overtime against a team like Winthrop.
Well, I mean, even then, we know what this team is capable of. We've seen just the units that's on this team, and obviously, I mean, Abel and Gunny had been the guys to go to in this game so far, but I mean, a lot of other players are going to step into the plate as well, but even then still, isn't going to be enough for a round like this. We saw the big force pretty kick things off, but even then still, Winthrop in the OT, they got used to it. They knew that they were owed a 4th round in a row on the defending side, and well, they have found it at prime time. Going right back to the attack once more, and just looking to put that final nail in the coffin. But Stony Brook having a full buy every single point past this one. It's not about the ultimates, it's about who we can actually see go on these massive sprees. And Gunny, even then still having the not dead yet, it seems like he still managed to die the majority of the rounds, even when you take that out of the equation. So I mean, while this guy has been in seemingly every single situation to fight a player, is he going to be ready for it on this time? Can it be stationed in the correct position? And right up the middle once more, you need him ready for a rotate, but you don't need him ready to die. And well, with that exchange through the middle, that's exactly what he does, finding only one before them, but Tonka T is able to go ahead and capitalize on the moment and find a second. But it's just a straggler. It's not the guy that was on the site that you were pushing. The rest of those guys are in the middle of the map, pushing through, seeing what they can manage to find, and maybe get the numbers on their side once more.
Yeah, they're trying to set up for a split push to get control over this B site. Spike is looking to go through garage. One player sitting still inside vending, just kind of biding their time in that rotate, making sure that STG, if they were to go down, maybe there's a quick refrag to work with. But now with Echo being eviscerated by Tonka T, well, Winthrop may not have the best chances on this offensive approach, and it'll have to play in for another one. But Janitor wants to clean up this deadlock that's currently trapped within attacker spawn. Hey, you're in my territory. I'd like to leave that to my team only. And unfortunately, the deadlock still proves too powerful to work against. STG gets a good execution onto Majestic, but you know you're flanked. Spike is under control for the deadlock of Big Tonka T. An ultimate is used in hopes to maybe catch off STG. They'll just throw it right at the player. Unfortunately, gets caught, but doesn't matter. Interesting animation for it. Winthrop will be forced into another round
Switching
set
sides.
of OT, and
Overtime.
Stony Brook will move back over to the attack. That didn't show much in terms of potential on their last approach towards the A site. That, well, they don't have a great way to close the distance, bar the
Right.
Shrouded Step, and they just don't play in angles that let the Shrouded Step really find value if you're Winthrop's defense.
Yeah, a little weak armed on that last push, but I mean, hey, Winthrop obviously on the defensive side, I mean, that's where we're expecting them to kind of go a little bit hard hitting. And I think, honestly, after that last round, understanding the allocation to players is kind of there, they should be able to really overwhelm the likes of what we get over on this A side this time, knowing that Veyron is now stationed up. He was getting the TP kind of ready, getting the strip ready for anywhere else in the map in case the rotation comes into play. He knows that he needs to probably be over on this A site. And now with him being present, I mean, this complete equation has totally flipped on its head. You're just waiting for Gunny, who is kind of straggling around, maneuvering through the map as the solo man who, I mean, I would argue needs to be in the middle of everything. If there's anyone who's capable of kind of really going ham and clearing an entire site by themselves, it's going to be him. But one person that isn't going to do it will be able for this round. Another big piece of utility. Obviously, still smokes in play, but you don't really have those kind of near sight flashes anymore, and those big carries that bypass a lot of this utility. So it's going to be a big slowdown when Stony Brook does press the W button, because
Spike down
SCG's
mid.
picked off another. Bears holding back towards Rope, finds Gunny, another head in the middle, and it just comes down to the two remaining as Tonka T can get one, but there's four more still in front of you.
Yeah, this offense is just really struggling to find what they can consider to be home, find comfortability in terms of rotating in towards these sites. Spike will be easily placeable now here on B site. A close encounter there with the opposite kind, as a shot from up inside of heaven just barely rings past your Sage, going for that plant. It will still go down nonetheless, and Big Tonka T will watch from down below, sonar in front of them to catch anyone dropping down if they were to step past and through that smoke. SDG would be the player to do so first. Thomas watching here. The moment this smoke dissipates, time will tell if you go through alley as well, but it's
Yeah.
actually two players through garage, and Thomas is going to run out of time here fast. That smoke will dissipate. You only get one in the afterlife now if you're the Clove, and VAL timing at its finest gives sight lines for Veyron to catch Thomas off guard, and the two players from garage. It's Winthrop defending as we have seen them do all over again, getting the lead here at OT, and now being one round away from finishing this if they can just stop Stony Brook's defense that has proven to be a very powerful force and made the comeback in the second half.
I mean, we've seen it when it comes around to what Winthrop can do. I mean, they've won both round threes of each half. So seeing how things are going when it comes around to adaptability, finding a game plan, throwing something at the wall and hoping it sticks. Once you had that full buy inside of your arsenal, they're the ones who I think have obviously had the leg up inside of this. Sure, it's back and forth so far, but now with Winthrop leading on both of those defensive ones, they are the ones who did exactly that on the defense. When you say, hey, everybody should have a bit of a full buy, it's completely just random of what we're really going to be kind of allocating across the map, because round 1 and 2 should be just a little bit of a warm-up, but they still have an influence on the game. But you're the one who had to put in that extra work to make sure that third one doesn't matter, because 3-0s are usually not death assists, but they're very, very drab to look at. So seeing how things are going here to get number 28 underway, it's a matter of, once again, Veyron pushing up, having the operator, hoping somebody overextends, gives you something to work with. And well, at the moment, obviously, knowing that this guy is about to go in every single round, when these players find a corner to tuck themselves into on Stony Brook's side, they're not really going to leave those without having a smoke and play first.
Veyron wait for that to dissipate, goes in for a peek. One player sitting in cubby on that A ramp. This has been a very effective player in their arsenal. Fair gets spotted and gets the intel, goes for the hinder,
just know
gets a
he's
ton
there.
off, but somehow Majestic is still alive. I don't know how this player is here and standing. Shorty out, doesn't matter. Not nearly enough damage from this player, especially with the regrowth being online. Fair has to lose that 1v1 for Stony Brook to stand a chance, but Thomas now has to claim, re-ground themselves within tower and shut down that player that moved in through ropes, but unfortunately was failing to do so. Janitor is still there, unknown where they will continue to lie, whether they'll lap back or continue to stand there. And that makes tower a question mark for Stony Brook's defense. Not really there for claimability. One player working in. Big Tonka T needs to execute here onto Veyron, and does. That gives sightlines now through security for these two players to work through. The Astral will go ahead and come down and go for a Cosmic Whirlpool to kind of stun and concuss anyone within security. Echo, here's the Shrouded Step, needs to extend. No cover from either side. Big Tonka T
my
caught with
goodness.
utility. Thomas down as well, and Winthrop Winthrop have secured it. 15 round wins, enough rounds of overtime, and Winthrop will take Stony Brook's map pick and shut down the team that we were saying the difference between surprise and standard. The standard is not enough for map 1.
Yeah, it's just one of those maps where things just kind of go out of your way for a couple of those rounds. And even in still, I mean, a lot of small mistakes where you're going to see Stony Brook going back and saying that should have been done, that should have been done. Even then, I'm going to be looking at round number, I believe it was 22, where we saw Gunny pop that not dead yet when it felt like they already had the man advantage, when that could have been exercised in the next round to continue that next scuffle you got into to really draw things out, find that stat line you want, find more guys to get down, and provide that reinforcement, that, extra element, that distraction in play. It's just, obviously that's a big note for me, but these guys are going to see a lot more because they were in the moment. They were the ones inside that server, but still great attempt nonetheless. Just Winthrop and those ecos. I mean, they only had like 2 of them, but that was enough to obviously turn the tide to even get themselves to do an OT in the first place, where it felt like Stony Brook obviously feel like that map should have been theirs if they just really played the game like it should have been.
And keep in mind as well, the Resurrect is really used as an eco saver, and that for the later Resurrects throughout those rounds, they were never really used as a way to save a round and get that extra round win, which for Stony Brook, when we talk about that 1v1 between Echo and Thomas, right? Thomas could have gone with the Resurrect, then pushed into Echo, dealt with him in tower with 2 players. The Shorty, it took the second shot to kill, which means there was no more left in there, which would have been a free kill for that second player. They opted not to do it. Instead, they used it the next round. They brought back up their teammate, a Big Tonka T, and guess what happened? Sorry, no, Gunny. And guess what happened? The moment they solidified out of that Resurrect, they're instantly decimated by Veyron again. The same thing we saw happen at the beginning of that first half, bound in round 4 or 5, when that first Resurrect came out from Thomas. That was a consistent thing out of this team. That ultimate just was not used to its fullest potential. And when you're talking about rocking 2 Sentinels, one of those being the Sage, yes, most of the utility talk is going to be around that Ice Ball and the way that it forces players to move certain ways, the way that it gives information. That was not the case. Your ultimate was so important for your team, and unfortunately every single one of those was either a waste or it was used once towards the end of that half on the very end as a way to save a little bit of extra credits to play for the next, which you would not have had to worry about. 1 round would have been the difference maker. You win that one with the 1v1 against Echo and Thomas, you would have won that map and it never would have gone to overtime on that return. Instead, you're forced into overtime, you lose out on your map pick, and now Winthrop have the lead going through the series.
Yeah, and heading into their map selection as well. So obviously a lot of things kind of up in the air in terms of what Stony Brook can accomplish, knowing that they have the frag ability for at least some isolated players to really kind of go on these strings. We saw it there. Winthrop were definitely a lot better just kind of keeping the kills tight, keeping them together, and having those lineups, and especially with the introduction of Veyron. I mean, dude was doing absolutely everything he could to hold down a singular site by himself. He did phenomenal in that respect. But obviously attack is a much different story, with the teams on the attacking side for Crow being a little bit too much to handle, and we could see one side affair once more, but we don't really know. We'll see on the other side of this break with Crow. I'm ready to come back at you.
Stony Brook University is a place for daring. Daring to see where you can go when you follow your heart. Even when it leads outside your comfort zone. Daring to ask bigger questions. Who will I be? Where will I thrive? What is my legacy? At Stony Brook University, we dare to find answers to these questions every day. In the classroom, in the field, on the water. Even in the spark of a spontaneous moment. Daring to define your own path is not always easy, but it is always worth it. At Stony Brook, New York's flagship university, we are united by one simple truth: to be something more in this world. Start with daring to be true to yourself. Stony Brook University. Dare to be.
Welcome to the Winthrop University Esports Facility. This 6,500 square foot facility, located in the historic Lowenstein building, serves as a public space for gaming in the Rock Hill and Winthrop University communities, and is home to some of the best collegiate esports players in North America. As a varsity Winthrop University esports player, you will have access to private practice rooms to work on your craft alongside your teammates. Here at Winthrop, we strive to provide our players with the highest quality equipment currently available. Along with the varsity team rooms, players have access to a dedicated content creation space and a private lounge that can be used for VOD review, a quiet lunch, or just somewhere to catch up on schoolwork. The facility has 2 public bathrooms, a water fountain, and common spaces for lounging and watch parties. Welcome to a new generation of gaming in Rock Hill. Welcome to the Winthrop University Esports Facility.
I've been wondering why I've never felt human. Am I alone? Do I belong here? They paint the world in black and white, it's confusing. I wanna let them know that I'm something else. I don't care what you say to me, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between your type. Don't think, just fall in line. What's the point of living life if it ain't even mine? All the best things I know sit in the void. It makes me wanna scream that I'm something else. I don't care who I'm meant to be, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between
Well, the first map of Split did not necessarily pan out. It was a very split system. It went into overtime, as you'd love to see for a map like that, but it was Stony Brook's map pick, and it didn't pan out in favor for Stony Brook. Winthrop, not even with their main primary roster. I believe they just have 2 of their actual starting roster, maybe 3 of their current starting roster, not in the team, right? So you're looking at this and going, how are they doing this against a Stony Brook that actually did take down the Winthrop main roster in playoffs just a couple months ago? And now we're falling short of doing exactly that against a team that is majority-wise this new blood system and kind of rolling system that Winthrop are currently bringing to the table, and they have to do it now on their map pick of Corrode.
Yeah, a map where things don't really fare too well for one side or the other. I mean, one of those maps that doesn't go down to nearly as much of an even affair like we saw in the likes of Split. I mean, that's the one map that I remember being the closest just overall, besides Ascent, where it feels more consistent.
Yeah.
When it goes to Split and you have an evenly matched team, you and I have literally seen an entire second game worth of OT rounds on that map before. So it's insane to know what that map is capable of when teams are that closely matched. But this is that map where it feels like a big gamble, where it's either you're going to either completely demolish or get demolished. And well, with Winthrop on the defensive side, it spells some pretty good tails here for old Stony Brook, but they went ahead and subbed out Abel as well for Gia in this. So that guy who is going off in map number 1, and who is usually just an insane dude to have on the board, not in play here. So we're going to see what Gia can do to kind of maybe hold up Torch.
Yeah, so this is a player that we had talked a little bit about, kind of flushed really well into a system pick like Yoru, where we aren't likely to see that now, right? We're probably going to see that standard Waylay with no other duelist besides them. We've seen some variations on that just this last weekend, right? We saw one side pick the Waylay, one side had a Yoru and a secondary duelist and try to work in a different style. It worked out in a lot of ways. It didn't work in some other ways, right? So it's going to be very interesting to me to see what the Asian selection is going to look like now, having to switch out a player. And this isn't necessarily the wildest thing for Stony Brook. They did swap a couple players here in and out depending on the map and the games and the series they were going into last semester for that entire split, but they really kept that standard status quo of that starting 5, and then it didn't end up being the case for, you know, that final playoff game. But seeing that happen here in the first game of the split and in a matchup where they just lost map 1 kind of spells to me that they are very concerned as to what went down. You'll go ahead and see there once again rocking out that chamber. Still, they're going to bring out a controller choice out of the Omen. They will have a Yoru in play alongside that Waylay for that double duelist selection. Yeah. And then you see turning the other way for Stony Brook. They have opted to go for a double duelist in the same way that we've seen Winthrop do. They are going to play that Waylay alongside that Yoru, and it will not be Abel picking up that secondary choice. Instead, it'll be Majestic doing so, who started to look real good with that at the end of last split, and Gio will be picking up that pacing over on that initiator for the fade.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so, going ahead and playing into the side that you kick off on. I mean, both these teams are going to see them pandering towards the attack side. Winthrop obviously doing it on split, even when they started on defense, with Stony Brook kind of swapping things up, not doing that double sentinel like we noticed during that last match, instead opting knowing that, hey, we start on the attacking side, we got to start strong, because that last map going as even as it did lets the team know that they are evenly matched towards the likes of Winthrop. So if they go ahead and really play into the composition to just drive in that first half, they should be in a good spot, especially see what we've seen historically in Corrode, knowing these attacking side teams usually have the favor by the end of it. Then, I mean, go ahead and maybe possibly double it. Just find some more efficiency there.
Quick moving away. Overall, the offense for Stony Brook are starting to actually make headway into an objective, but it is capped off pretty well by Winthrop, getting a couple two. Stony Brook will have players on site, but Gutty was a little bit late to the party to get over there, and thanks to that, they're still stuck in no man's land. Now between them, Yard as well as Pocket, with players able to watch either end of that. One player inside of Link connecting to A site could be a very constant threat for Gunny, and the peak is just being just barely not far enough to get a visual for it. You have a player outside in Crane, and just on that A execute out into defender side on this A site. Gunny is in a very bad spot, lying in wait around any corner as a player for Winthrop. And will have to move in to go for that plant, but unfortunately the headhunter comes out for Veyron, and it will be a round win for Winthrop again, where they actually get a pistol, unlike what they were capable of doing the entirety of that first map, where Stony Brook actually took every single pistol round.
Yeah, I mean, this is, keep in mind, like I said earlier, I mean, the half where Stony Brook are hopefully, even then, if it's free utility, no matter what's kind of given to them, they're hoping to find everything available to really just drive in this first half. And obviously a first round is in order, but the second one after, looking at the buy, Stony Brook isn't matching it like what we saw in Winthrop during that second half of the first map. They're looking to just kind of go ahead, roll over, see what they can manage with the classics, and beyond that, not really stress too much of it. It's effectively kind of wanting and being okay with giving Winthrop this 2-0 start in what is effectively a sixth of the entirety of what you should be just steamrolled.
You hear the gate crash. You're not really sure if it was a fake or if they actually went and extended into it. We'll turn just in case, no matter what. SGG gets the first frag here against Stony Brook, and losing out on that Waylay now means you don't really have any way to close through that gap. And keep in mind, the Waylay here, we talked a lot about it, in that first map. The difference between a duelist that's there to separate sightlines and a duelist that's there to remove utility. There's not a whole lot of utility that has to be kind of burnt here for Winthrop. It's just really that trademark, and most of the time you can already see it and just shoot it out. It's not a big concern. But for Winthrop, they want to go guns up, so you need more of a distraction, and you also need to stop Stony Brook at the gate, and that's exactly what they've done. STG caught off guard by how deep Big Tonka is. Fair will get that refrag instantly back, and it's just Majestic now with the Bandit in hand, trying to work their way into sight, but Spike, well, kind of wielded by the wrong person, very deep in yard, now behind boxes, and Winthrop are aware of that fact. Will just cascade around it and wait for the player to have to peek and extend to them, and Veyron will be that final finishing blow at that Marshall to secure Sniper. What else in this player's hands? Winthrop now at 2-0.
Yeah, Bandit, Vandal, Guardian, I mean, just lots of good guns in the hands of these Winthrop players, kind of handed over, not only by Stony Brook in terms of the guns being bought, in the case of that Bandit, but everything beyond that too, where you see today. I mean, why not just go ahead and pick up whatever you can, carry on the buys to the last one. STG having that Vandal, I mean, showing a very impressive showing with it, at least in those first couple rounds. And now, and as we see carrying into number 3, should be on the verge of getting that dimensional drift. But that's going to be more for a retake, because this guy, effectively right off rip, is going to want to get in the many as fights as possible. I mean, already pushing out through those arches, looking to get a couple players, but with that Brim Stem on play, you don't really want to be matching up against that too much. Speaking of Brim, able to find one and for Tonka T, but everybody else, I mean, it's a 1-1 trade, retake underway, and as I mentioned, dimensional drift could have been possible for STG. It's not really as doable anymore, considering that, I mean, every kill you make is with progress already to that site, which Echo unfortunately cannot do.
Janner's in a rough spot, needs to try to sting out, but Stinger does not reach that far. Big Tonka T gets now their 3rd kill of this round. From up above is STG. 4th now for Big Tonka T. Is it an ace? It is!
Oh,
in the 3rd
my
round
God.
of this half. 3 rounds into the 2nd map. Big Tonka Tony says it's my time to shine. And will drop down every single player on the side of Winthrop to secure their place in, well, Division 1 history. We like to talk a lot about the aces and the individual players. You already have the ultimate online, and making the choice for that Brim instead of really any other controller, I feel like a lot of that is going to come as a choice for the ultimate and the kit around it, right? You want the mollies, you want the post-plant assurances, you want them to be able to position well. Whether or not you're having to use your duelists as ways to clear utility, you want to have plenty of utility in those post-plants to still find yourself valuable, and that's also why we saw them play so many Sentinels on map 1.
Just obviously good start here once more for the likes of Winthrop, holding things down. Odin in play now. What we could say, obviously, like what Maryville was doing, taking a note out of that book, having a player who's effective with that gun. I mean, I've been checking the patch notes. I didn't really see any buffs that came into play, but obviously, I mean, just more players present that want to utilize that weapon and what that spray can really accomplish. So, manages to find a couple. Veyron cleans up the 4th, and well, it is nothing but Tonka T remaining. And the player who, you know, was thankful to have that ace in the round prior, to have an orbital strike on hand for this round and anyone going forward, but your team didn't really get into a position where you can actually utilize that for a post-plant scenario.
Well, you're stuck here, bottom mid, forced to wait. STG flanking in behind you. Do they get a visual? It'll be really tight. No, they'll get it easily. As Big Tonka T does not extend past that, so they're still feeling very unsafe in the approach there through mid. It'll be a round win for Winthrop to continue to move forward. We talk a lot about how the offense can feel powerful here for a map like Corrode, can really overcome obstacles that Winthrop will try to lay up, and really any team will try to lay up defensively. There's a lot of ways you can kind of counteract that pressure. One, a lot of teams will just completely absolve their control over towards mid, allow those teams to get through Link, and instead play very heavily through those mains and allow the rotates to be capable and accessible for those players on site to be able to lap back into those back corners, back through defender spawn or inside those elbows. Instead, Winthrop are doing it with guns, playing very early into the face of Stony Brook. I mean, there's an Odin in hand here for round 5 coming out of your Sova in an attempt to have something to spray through, barraging 7.62 in the direction of this offensive Stony Brook that will have to close the gap quickly. There's a quick flash. There it is. Executes onto the first. The second will be eviscerated, though it's finished off by Fair. One blind shot more into into Gia, I should say, and Winthrop will secure themselves a 4th round win, with Stony Brook forced to funnel in and not having any way to actually stop that, thanks to how many smokes were put down. And mind you, it was their smokes. It was Sky smokes blocking that way.
Right. It's just unfortunate to see. I mean, already a 4-1 start here. Winthrop, we talk about these sides and what they really kind of pander towards one or the other, and seeing that attacking historically has been the heavier side when it comes around to Division 1 matches specifically. I mean, that's just not the case here for the likes of Winthrop, holding things down beautifully on the defense, knowing that Stony Brook, as I mentioned earlier, has this double duelist set up. And I mean, they're hoping to kind of accomplish maybe some successful pushes, really kind of get the ball rolling. But I mean, with the power of these smokes and with this Odin in play, knowing the brim smoke and the sprays will be coming through, this is just perfect counter agent for that, saying, why not just go ahead, press W on the side, see how that goes for you, whether you're dashing, whether you're, you know, crawling, no matter what you're really doing here. You are effectively just walking into my line of fire of this massive magazine that will finish to kill at least a couple of you.
Winthrop still have a major player advantage, and you can already see just how far they're willing to peek into these fights. Good contestation from Thomas. Not only gets one, but actually executes onto two. Janitor and Fair. That is not a fight you'd expect really either of those two players, Dallas, to lose, considering where we saw Thomas sitting in the end of that first map. But they came alive in this one, but unfortunately, no matter how much you live, sometimes you're still forced to meet your maker, and that will come through with Winthrop and another round win, and Stony Brook will wisen up to at least something. They'll need to make a conversation piece out of the way these rounds have kind of panned out. 5 ultimates on the board for Winthrop. They've not been pressured to use it. Stony Brook have only 2 on their docket, one of those being the Orbital Strike, the other one being that Nightfall. That is utility that is good. 1 for a post plant, 1 actually in use. The Tour de Force has also already been popped by Thomas, so they want to come through with this weapon. But my goodness, 4 rounds of a difference already when you're on the attacking side of things. Winthrop are 1 round away from guaranteeing even at halftime. And we say a lot of times for Corrode, Dallas, 3 feels like a luxury for a lot of defending teams. And yet, they're already beyond that margin, and they're dominating this half so far against Stony Brook with how much pressure they're applying into no man's land and even into what should be attacker territory.
Yeah, they're already sitting in very close range to what could already be an even half, worst case scenario. And beyond that, I mean, they've done it near without any problems or hiccups in the process. I mean, sure, you've lost guns, you've lost players, you've had deaths, that's inevitable, but not ever being pushed to the brim to the point where you're saying, oh, I got to pop an ultimate for this retake, or I got to, you know, pop an ultimate, or a crazy amount of utility, just overwhelm these guys to take some space back. They've just held everything, and I think the Odin obviously has been a big point in that, knowing that, I mean, if that gun is in play, you're looking to kind of see what you can do and what kind of players can pick this guy off. But I mean, these smokes are literally tearing your attacking side apart, and it feels like you're kind of forced to use them.
Smoke will go down. Thomas has a good visual, but again, this hasn't really been the side we've seen Winthrop applying pressure in these early fights, right? They'll peek initially, they'll immediately step backwards, and then they won't peek B main ever again. They sit back, they wait, they force Stony Brook to come to them. Their pressure has come down through A main instead. There are not many players for Stony Brook have really applied themselves in a way that they're trying to get kills. There's a great shot from Majestic, though. Fair gets both players hindered inside A link for that execute. Thomas gets dealt with, but after they had just taken down the Yoru of STG in even 3 versus 3. Echo Shrouded step up onto the corner boxed by Tree in B main, and Janitor still holding top mid. Has to make a choice in terms of target acquisition, and gambles 50-50. Tries to lay damage evenly between the both of them, and they pay the price. Paranoia alongside that Nightfall. Great counters to each other. The short sight does not connect from Gia onto Echo, but it doesn't matter. The 7.62 from the Vandal does. And it'll be a spike plant for Stony Brook, one of the first we've seen from them with true impact in a 2v1 scenario.
Yeah, well, here it is. Against no other than the likes of Aeron, though, and that's scary to say the least. I mean, this guy has found so many sense of kills over the course of these rounds. It just comes down to the gun that he has in hand to play with, and well, an operator is one thing, but imagine to pick up a Vandal or a Phantom in the process when you're going onto that rotate, when you're going to be pushing these players. Even then, Headhunter alone could do more than enough. But seeing how things are going, plenty of utility available in the hands of these 2 remaining Stony Brook players with that connect checked. You know they're not going to be on that site, but with the timer ticking off, well, seems like Vagron's going to be giving this thing up and looking towards the next with the rest of his team.
Call was made. Had an operator in hand. There really isn't much they have to do or can do. They'll step into the territory of their rendezvous and take it to get closer into the A side. And Winthrop will still hold on to all 5 of their ultimates. And the operator, as expensive as it is, and Stony Brook will come through with Well, the cost of one, right? The tour de force that came out from Thomas, and we will say that that was a big difference maker in terms of gaining control over the B site, knocking one more, peg of the pieces that are required to lock and hold on to that B site for Winthrop. And it came down to that battle between congestion early from Gia, the attempt of the Nightfall against Echo that came out with a even split until we kind of go up and over the top. And speaking of, Fair goes up and over and attempts to create some spacing for STG, does exactly that. STG gets 2. Veyron has the crossfire for the approach down through mid and secures a kill, and now puts Stony Brook left with just 2 remnants, because that's truly all that it is, and they have to go crazy. Majestic strikes true for Janitor and Fair. They've now turned this round from a demonstrably terrible starting step to an even footing. 2 versus 2 with Spike prowling its way towards this A site. Operator is watching this archway, but you still have to get SGG to flank over here quickly, because if they take this timing poorly, this will be a 2v1 on site with SGG forced to retake.
I'll handle this.
I mean, rightfully so. Making that call there, you knew a player was going to show up eventually, but even then still, if it was dimensional drift, that's a totally different story. That's way too much to really kind of go up against. So good call for Vader. Go ahead, move to the very back of the map. Don't really give too much up. Even the dimensional drift really gets beyond even really fighting there, and the call's been made that he is towards the back of that site. Where is the Twinkle to come through? And it comes out for one. You saw the second back towards his archers. You make the call to STG for that. Nice little pinch play coming through, and execution to find a 6th round to play with there. Winthrop, even they had a beautiful start to that round. I mean, they were expected to win it. They had a little bit more fighting to do to actually earn it.
Suffocating approach for Winthrop. STGs comes from that flank. Yeah, a little timing's a little bit tight to really stop the approach of the eventual spike plant, but a beautiful way for Veyron to make the call. I've cleared out back side. I cleared out corner. I just removed a player in that deepest crevice of this A objective. That now means this player has to be inside of elbow. Clear pocket, get into there fast, and execute. And SGG is a system player for a system that, I'm going to be frank with you, for Winthrop, feels like any player can successfully kind of funnel into this one. It doesn't have to be this NRG full team scouted like we joked about with the way that this program is so successful and so broadly recognized. They can do that with system pieces that can just be scouted and scholarshiped and worked with and kind of molded as players and individuals. Gunny will try to go up over the top as a distraction. It's Fair, though, in STG. That fine opening kills. The orbital strike will try to keep players separated, but it has not stopped Fair from moving forward. STG gets yet another kill. Now this one onto Thomas. Fair will finally fall, but it may not matter as the player count for Stony Brook is so few and far between. It's an owl drone out, taps off the kill for Gia, who only gets 1, and Winthrop survive another one with STG getting 4 kills out of the 5 to make the odds now for a positive half guaranteed for Winthrop, sitting at 7.
Yeah, just good looks here for Winthrop. I mean, obviously showing their prowess on this map, seeing what they're doing, and just kind of the way they're holding this thing down. I mean, purely, I want to say, just by the fights alone, I mean, they're not really even stationing themselves up too much for success. They're just taking a lot of these fights kind of outright, and it feels like more times than not, Stony Brook just aren't really ready for that. Earlier in those rounds, we saw the Odin in play, a lot of spray kills kind of coming through. We've seen now Stony Brook trying to kind of go ahead and adjust to that. Maybe not really play as many smokes, but a little bit more aggressively. Now at that point, you see this, I mean, Winthrop has to drop the Odin, has gone for more the Vandals, the Phantoms, the outright fighting, and the Angels that they are taking just seem to be playing in their favor much better.
Gunny will have only a Sheriff. The full team is behind them. Mind you, Stony Brook want to get into this spacing. They've already lost 1 here on this push. When you step in a pocket, though, you'd be willing to fight against a Vandal this close. And both Fair and Echo are here. Another smoke will be layered on top of pocket. Big Tonka T needs to either place 1 more or just confirm that they're going to have to give up that position. And Fair makes it an undeniable fact. 3, make it 4. Winthrop on top of the world right now here on Corrode. 8 round wins to their name. They have just 2 to Stony Brook, and there's still 2 more rounds left to go with. This could be 10-2 by the end of it, and all those ultimates that we see Stony Brook was holding on to, trying to play with, having all 5 at one point in time, right? Having multiple rounds in a row of all 5 at one point in time. Saving those, using those, and everything in between did not pan out in the way they needed it to, which was to get a couple rounds and play for that second half.
Yeah, I mean, these couple rounds they can still manage to get, but I mean, they have already gotten a couple, just the worst case of interpretation of that word. as sitting on only 2, clearly not all that great. I mean, that's essentially pistol round and 1 afterwards if they ended up actually even winning that, but they didn't. So seeing Winthrop here, I mean, obviously feeling a little more pressured as when we found that first time out in play when they were sitting at 5 rounds, they had all their ultimates at their disposal. So they have been using a couple of those. They have felt Stony Brook attemptfully kind of meeting them and making them force their hand a little bit, but even then, they have just so much to answer with that Stony Brook, even when they do feel like they kind of have like a trump card or ace up the sleeve, it's just not really enough. But a good first blood comes through, a nice little follow-up as well, until eventually Fair gets his fair share of that fight. And, well, not only finds 2, but 3, maybe managing a 4th, but Gunny shuts him down.
This player's just hiding behind box. They're just hiding behind bricks. And this is like Stony Brook attempting to clear into space and do a great job of working alongside the Yoru clone to get the flash out into Link. That gives you the chance for 2 kills. You gain it. It's player advantage. Go for Stony Brook. But after that, they falter. And even though Gunny hits a gnarly connection to Janitor there, they're not expecting the second player inside Link. So essentially, in that round, Winthrop had 4 different players inside Link, 3 of which were felled there, but it doesn't matter. Thanks to 1 man of Fair and the side of Stony Brook not correctly checking either that box they were hiding behind or failing to shut down this waylay after they go for the double dash up and above and the hinder. This is such a core piece, it feels like, for this team. And I cannot imagine seeing players shift away from roles or what's going to happen when, move stats back onto this team. You get Infiltrator and Governor back in, right? And the players start to funnel back in from their, time and tenures currently in VCT. This Winthrop roster is going to be that much more threatening, and it's coming off the back of Janitor for this round. 4 kills already. Send a convergent pass. They wanted the ace for Janitor, but they just don't get it. Big Tonka T's alone, and Fair puts the knife in the back of Tony to try to secure not just the round win, but double digits for Winthrop in a first half that is everything you could have ever wanted for the 2 rounds Stony Brook scraped by.
Yeah, I mean, just back and forth, we see this weapon coming into play. The Odin being such a pain point for the likes of Stony Brook when it's brought into the rounds, but it's not going to be much of a concern here, considering that the next 2 not only could just be the pistol, the one following, but that could also just be the end in its own right if Winthrop manages to kind of flip the script and win out both the pistol rounds on this map, like we saw Stony Brook during the last. So, just a lot of issues here plaguing Stony Brook and what they were managing to try to do on that offense, but it never really came into full fruition. And, well, I mean, they could have themselves a nice little sub here for D because Thomas has effectively been warming up and the rest of the team has been there to kind of match it to a degree. But, I mean, you got to see it on all forces, and I don't really know if that's all present right now at the moment. But Stony Brook find the first. I mean, we see it right there. Majestic getting that initial kill on the Veyron, but I mean, out of anybody 2 killed, I mean, obviously it's nice when he's dead. That His Hunter is now out, but a lot of damage has been done in exchange.
SDG deeper in, currently using the Ghost alongside Fair. This combo has been so powerful between these 2 players. And it's just a matter of now getting into that back of sight. Not much utility in terms of a waylay to work with. Fair is just testing the waters, the limit of this Sky Smoke. Geo is also very low as well already. Stony Brook's defense, well, they've held on for the first blood, but how much more time can they buy? A suffocating pressure brewing up from this B-side Link. Bottom mid, top mid, all clear. Nobody mid-window. Thomas as the headhunter, and STG does not check this angle, giving up the free kill, and Janitor's forced to refrag. The pressure is on. 1 player up above in heaven. Big Tonka T on site goes uncleared. Fair goes down. Here. Janitor gets right-clicked by Big Tonka T, and Echo has to come into this one now in a 1v3. Timing will be tight. They need to hit the head of Tonka, but they don't do it. He's too Tonka tough for you. Stony Brook start off the second half of the pistol round win.
Give themselves a nice little bit of fresh air, not too much, but just enough to let them remind of what the outside feels like, knowing what freedom can feel like, and getting a take stack can be just enough to really drive you forward to maybe get yourself a couple more. But they got a very long road to even themselves some equilibrium inside this match, so they got to make sure to kind of follow suit for Winthrop of what they did during the last half and show their defense is going to be just as prominent as what we saw out of that first half. But I mean, as things go, this buy obviously looking a little bit awkward, but you do get the 1 singular Vandal. We saw an idea of a Odin maybe coming into play pretty early, but you don't want to reveal that out of your sleeve too early because these smokes, I think that Winthrop's already learned from, they don't really have as much. They don't have the Sky Smokes. They're not throwing down 3 simultaneously. They were going 1 by 1, relying on that Omen. because, well, they want to clear their corners a lot more procedurally. And, well, I think by doing that, they're going to find themselves a lot more successful fights, but not in a round like this where you're just kind of outgunned.
They're on such a capital force when it comes to Winthrop in these pressure pushes into these sites. Headhunter in hand. We saw the way that Stony Brook lost out in their second round of the second half on the first map of Split. Not the standard 2-1 split you were expecting to see, and instead a 1-1 start. The pistol rounds didn't matter too much. Obviously, Winthrop got the first one in this half. Stony Brook followed through into the second half of this map. And they're following through with kills just the same. Short sight, great connection. Gunny gets one with a stinger, eventually dealt with. SGG has to refrag, lost Janitor, and Majestic is just holding the Bucky up close and puts an end to the forward movement by Winthrop through pockets. It's exactly what you want to see, a Yoru with a shotgun and actually finding kills. We saw a couple attempts from that, and the Bucky more specifically on Split up through male Dallas, and unfortunately not having the right click connection they were hoping for, this time being more consistent, and a good start for Stony Brook to get 2 in a row, something they were not capable of doing throughout the entire first half.
Yeah, just one of those things, man. I mean, obviously, a second round that we're expecting Stony Brook to kind of be able to pull out there, and Winthrop, I mean, if they start off the half at 10, I can't really see it's a checkpoint chokehold kind of situation unless we actually do see the next 6 going in Stony Brook's favor, but we'll see how this bye round goes for Winthrop, because, I mean, they're expected to hopefully win this one, seeing the kind of guns in their hands. Once they get these Vandals, these Phantoms, these kind of more skirmish-style weaponry, I think that's when they really start to kind of come alive. But Bucky did get a shutdown, at least on the first. Going ahead, hinder the guy for the first one. There you go. Nice little trade coming underway. Echo does clear that out, but Gunny finds the exchange on the site. Spike is not down yet. I mean, utilities being funneled in, but kills are still going the way of Winthrop. Shot by shot, angle after angle. You have guys, you have coverage, and even then you still got a man on the flank, but it's not enough. Bayron cleaning things up there for the end. Echo carrying every other kill besides it.
Echo is filled so well right now for Winthrop. That's their 11th round win, dropping a ton of weapons out of the Winthrop's hands, though, with Stony Brook, which is exactly what you'd expect and want to see. But a round like that, when you're so close to victory, you've kept them away from sight, you've got utility that's flushing them away, they're forced to fight against you, and letting someone as simple as being inside pocket be that deciding factor for a kill is going to hurt the morale. It's going to hurt the forward progress despite the round victory on statistics going your way. And Stony Brook have to be aware of that fact. Big Tonka T will go ahead and watch top mid through window. Spots and notes already that Fair has gone through into Link. Flashes will go hard. There's a clone. Gunny will go ahead and shoot it out. Now gets the contestant against SGG in effect. And will ready themselves to go ahead and dash forward and maybe go backwards. Echo gets the first blood of the round, though they lose STG quickly after that fact. It is a back and forth battle early, but it's really meticulous efforts for Winthrop as it's a bait game towards A, and instead the full team has B site control and just needs to do spike over to go for plant.
And even then, I mean, you got a player rotating, you got number 2 over there, so ahead and over towards the side, just trying to go ahead, buy out whatever time you really can there. You know the Majestic has the judge in hand. You can't really be clearing these corners. You're just pushing to the side, making them push out towards you. So the front of the shadows was employed to go in place, find that rotation, and get towards the back of the side. And Echo managed to do that successfully, but can he find a couple kills off the back of this? And, well, with the Yoru pushing out on you, not really the case there. Veyron, last player standing, operator in hand. Not really the weapon you want to have when you're in a 1v area, but you find the first. Headhunter's good for number 2, but number 3 is instead in Majestic's name to find a 5th round in play for Stony Brook to kind of keep things alive a little bit longer, but still, as I mentioned prior, a very long road still to go ahead of them.
Yeah, it's just a hill in comparison to the mountain that's still in front of you, right? This is an uphill battle for both sides. Winthrop need to make sure they don't let this get out of hand. They need to make sure their offense is still firing on all cylinders. And despite the round win there for Stony Brook, credits aren't necessarily an easy commodity to come by. They got the operator. They have it collected here for defense. They had a Vandal they carried through. The rest of the players will be a little bit scrapped on cash. They'll go ahead and say, hey, what can we make big purchases of? Gia will go ahead and opt for a Guardian. You go in pretty big with a Judge, and then you have that Vandal. So there is value there for Stony Brook, but Winthrop are a type of team, if they flush you with numbers, if they make great connections, if they get utility to find information, which they're hunting for here with that recon bolt here through top mid, they may just be able to shut you down. The Judge comes through successfully. successful and the TP out for Majestic. So Winthrop's first attempt at execution here through Link falls short. They still have the speed and drive to get onto this A site from multiple angles up in this tertiary push. They want to get this spike down, but they've been stalled out. Great use of the orbital strike. They've lost pocket and elbow control thanks to Gunny's loss of life there with that headhunter. And the Stinger gets a great connection once the little bit of information is gained. They have to flush away from this A site, but the value that Winthrop gains from this is insurmountable.
I mean, everybody else is going on the rotate. You're expecting that. You're queuing it a little bit late, and they're not even really going fully towards the B site. You're going to get that plant down, but you're setting these roadblocks in place for the likes of the rest of these Stony Brook players when they do go for the rotate. Veyron is sniffed out here, but, I mean, still has a Vandal, not an operator in place. It can take a lot more fights than what could have prior. And even then still, Spike not being down, awkwardly enough, putting Stony Brook in this situation, figuring, where the hell do we go? What are we playing for here? Just leaving these players mindlessly roaming around the map, and, well, it kind of ends up being a double-edged sword here as Tonka T is able to find one, make sure to equal out the numbers. Janitor pushing towards the side, Spike in hand, and with him being dead, that's the round done and dusted. Tonka T just has to live, and I think with obviously number 4 sitting towards the center of the map, Waylay is not going to be able to rush you down from there.
Yeah, it's a great recovery off the back of Big Tonka T for Stony Brook. Winthrop doing it so hard, so heavy in the paint. They'd use the orbital strike. That's what kept them off that objective in the first place. So you start the round off with success if you're Big Tonka T. A little bit of utility, and by a little I mean a lot in this case because this is an ultimate, right? You flush them away from it, give the team time to rotate in. They successfully force them away from the A site. Veyron continue to stay inside elbow as a constant, consistent threat. They get one kill. You immediately shut that down back in return if you're Big Tonka T. You were able to be successful and impactful from the beginning to the end as a player. And that's exactly what Stony Brook need every single player to be capable of doing. And there are big moments where there's large droughts for some of these players, and that is a problem that cannot be allowed to happen against a team as good as this program, as this team, as these players are for Winthrop. And they exactly do that. Opening up Dimensional Drift for information, goes in with the judge, STG, Hunter's Fury out of Janitor with that intel, gets them one more. And why not let Fair join into the tally and another off the top? Stony Brook left with just 2. Make it just 1 with STG executing Gunny in mid-window. And it's just Majestic. Judge in hand. Torn asunder by shots from the flank. It's flawless at a Winthrop, and it is match and series point from this team already.
Wow, I mean, just obviously the defensive side looking much better for both these teams here today when it comes around to this map. But even then, still, Stony Brook just doesn't have enough rounds underneath their wing moving into this half to give them that breathing room. I mean, obviously, the quota has been met. We've seen the amount of rounds being won by Winthrop is what we saw during the entirety of Stony Brook in that first half. But, I mean, they're going to have to string together a lot. And, I mean, this could be the time they do it. Keep in mind, that's where we saw these 5 being strung together by Winthrop in that first half. But it's just a lot to ask for, man. Already opening things up, picking off Gunny. You're down to 4, and Tonka T can have a bit of an answer, but the shots are going out. Sights being pushed, and another player's down for the count to possibly finish this.
Well, Stony Brook, they need connections. They lose out on Gia, but Thomas is still standing. Thomas now getting a little bit of a visual towards Janitor. They have an L drone remaining as well, but it doesn't matter. Echoes flank them on B side itself. If you're stuck in Link, you're stuck there forever. Since the afterlife, not just Thomas, but your final player just the same. Winthrop will secure themselves a 2-0 series, and we were very concerned. This is that standard team. We were no longer surprised with what Stony Brook are capable of doing, but I think we're back into a little bit of an element of surprise, not just because Stony Brook didn't bring out what we were expecting, right? That same level of prowess, that same capability. They feel like they have maybe gotten a little cold in between last split and this split, but surprised by what Winthrop were able to bring to the table, not with their primary roster, just 2 of those players, and then with 3 substitutes coming in, fulfilling the roles that Governor, Infiltrator, Moves are currently not there, fulfilling that for the team and thriving in that space to do so. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, even then, I mean, funny enough, you mentioned cold. I mean, they're the team that got delayed because their governor literally
state of emergency.
Warned state of emergency for the state. So, see how things are going. I mean, obviously, maybe didn't really have power for the past couple of days. Things could have literally gone wrong for them in the worst way possible. But even then, still today, that's when the match kind of has to be brought out, where you got to have your homework, where you got to feel warmed up by now. And It's just not really the case for them. Obviously, map number 1 going in their direction, but map number 2 not really looking nearly as good as what we saw there. And this is one of those teams that, I mean, keep in mind the map rotation also is kind of really different compared to what we saw last time around. And that could have pandered towards the interest and the strengths of Stony Brook during the last split. And now that things are a lot different, it's just one of those kinds of things where Lotus isn't here and every team loved it, and it's just not really in play anymore. Same thing with Sunset. So there's going to be an adjustment period. I mean, it's first week of the season, not really the biggest first week of the split, excuse me. And they got some time to really kind of pick things up. And I think being this close, at least in the fair of on split specifically against the likes of Winthrop, I think it does have good promises for them and for the rest of the split in front of them. They just kind of really got to figure out, like I said, those small little tidbits here and there, as there was a lot more in that second map to go over.
Yeah, and they'll have plenty of time to kind of work through it. Oh, wait, no, they don't. There's more matches coming up this weekend, right?
Right.
Because this was a delayed game. They are going to have to very quickly figure things out heading into this weekend. More matches on Sunday and on Monday. But we're not done necessarily just here yet, folks. There will be an interview with one of the players here for the side of Winthrop. We'll get to poke at their mind just a little bit. But before that, we are going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. Let's get to the minds of this Winthrop roster.
Stony Brook University is a place for daring. Daring to see where you can go when you follow your heart. Even when it leads outside your comfort zone. Daring to ask bigger questions. Who will I be? Where will I thrive? What is my legacy? At Stony Brook University, we dare to find answers to these questions every day. In the classroom, in the field, on the water. Even in the spark of a spontaneous moment. Daring to define your own path is not always easy, but it is always worth it. At Stony Brook, New York's flagship university, we are united by one simple truth: to be something more in this world. Start with daring to be true to yourself. Stony Brook University. Dare to be.
Welcome to the Winthrop University Esports Facility. This 6,500 square foot facility, located in the historic Lowenstein building, serves as a public space for gaming in the Rock Hill and Winthrop University communities, and is home to some of the best collegiate esports players in North America. As a varsity Winthrop University esports player, you will have access to private practice rooms to work on your craft alongside your teammates. Here at Winthrop, we strive to provide our players with the highest quality equipment currently available. Along with the varsity team rooms, players have access to a dedicated content creation space and a private lounge that can be used for VOD review, a quiet lunch, or just somewhere to catch up on schoolwork. The facility has 2 public bathrooms, a water fountain, and common spaces for lounging and watch parties. Welcome to a new generation of gaming in Rock Hill. Welcome to the Winthrop University Esports Facility.
Better get down. Get down. I wanna see you get to the ground. You're being held up by the UK sound. Firing shots like caliber round. Like caliber round. Then you better get down. shots, high caliber round. If you know what's best, then you better get down. Down. Get down. Down. Better get down. Down. Get down. I wanna see you get to the ground. You're being held up by the UK sound. Firing shots, high caliber round. High caliber round. Then you better get down. High caliber round. Then you better get down. High caliber round. Then you better get down. High caliber round. Then you better get down.
People don't let me talk, only the text. Many times they give up on each other, go next. Fear being cast out, not that complex. We
Welcome back, everybody. We have ourselves an interview here with STG from the side of Winthrop. This is a player that's stepping onto the roster and kind of being a highlight reel for this team. How you doing after a victory like that, STG?
Doing good. Fun game.
How's the team feeling overall as well? I know y'all have to make some concessions with players on your substitute team and the primary.
Yeah.
How is the team faring overall right now?
I think good. I mean, definitely some time to adjust, but those games were fun and exciting, so it was good.
I mean, fair enough. I think obviously I want to talk more so about your implementation into the group because knowing that you seem like the full-time, at least in this series, Yoru guy, have you been encouraged a little bit more so to kind of be with the whole kind of team ideology, or has it been more so kind of like you being the Yoru, you get to kind of go ahead, just do whatever you want to do, say, hey man, just plug yourself in, do what feels right, and just play the game and just hit as many shots as you can because you did that, a lot of that today.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for the most part, definitely that split game near the end, I was like, we should just do this or do this, and things worked out. Especially that one round, I like jumped through mid on our eco with the Bucky and I killed 2. That was like just an instinct type of play, you know? So, yeah.
Primal out of STG. I think that's going to be our new code word for you, our new buzzword for you on broadcasts. Speaking of that, I know that y'all have obviously a lot of depth overall for the Winthrop roster. Having so many substitute players that are all amazing in their own right, can fit into a system that was proven here today. Knowing that fact, how has having players on the roster in the program, you know, being in VCT, playing for these, you know, insanely high echelon teams and performing, how has that helped the rest of the team grow and kind of fulfilling that gap? How has that evolved y'all's play across the board?
Yeah, I think there's a lot we've learned, and I think there's still a lot to learn. Like, it's kind of just absorbing the knowledge from the players that were already on this team and trying my best to like fill the shoes of the people I replaced, you know? So I think still a lot to come, but this was a good game.
And I think, I mean, talking about everything that is to come, I want to more so kind of everything you've already received coming into play, even more so all the kind of resources you as Winthrop have available to you as players. How do you feel like that's kind of all really plugged you into the system? How much have you feel like you've learned? How much of a player have you feel like you've improved thus far, being a part of this whole system, getting plugged in, being on this roster, and especially being chosen to be the one to kind of really represent inside of Division 1?
Yeah, I mean, I've only been here for like 2 weeks, so just these 2 weeks, I feel like I've learned a lot. And I mean, I'm going to be here for a while, so hopefully a bunch more to come, you know? I don't know.
Well, if you're here for a long time, then Dallas and I will probably be seeing you for quite a while, as we get to see you guys quite often across many leagues and things beyond, just in the collegiate space of things. Yeah. And just based off the gameplay we saw today, I think we're going to be in for a very fun series of matches throughout the remainder of Division 1 and just in general from you guys as you continue forward. But I'll give you a chance to shine real fast, to shout out anybody you're thankful for, your team roster, friends, loved ones, anyone else. Here's your chance to do so here, STG.
Yeah, shout out my team. Shout out everyone that got me here, and yeah.
All right, Short, sweet, simple to the point.
How tall are you before we get rid of you? I want to know.
I'm 6'2", but I mean, I can't stand up and show that.
He says this, he's like,
yeah.
I'm 6'2".
Exactly.
Leaning back in the chair. You can't tell if he sits up too much, Dallas. He gets actually out of frame.
Yeah.
So it's important for him. But I appreciate you, SDG. Thank you very much for stopping by. Best of luck to you guys. Congratulations, y'all's victory in this first week, and I hope there's many more for you guys to come.
Thank you.
All right, Dallas, it has been a ridiculously good Friday night to get a series out of the way. Stony Brook came in with their primary 5. Yes, they made a change over to Gia out of Abel in that second map there on Corrode, but my goodness, Winthrop with a team that is not even their primary usual starting roster, thanks to players going above and beyond, playing and subbing in for VCT teams and everything else in between, still comes through, avenges the loss their primary team had against that Stony Brook roster in playoffs, and comes away victorious.
Yeah, I mean, definitely good looks here for Winthrop for what they can accomplish. I mean, I think still, looking over the course of the season as things go along, they are treating this squad as it is their primary roster, realistically, because you always got to be ready for whatever kind of thrown to you. And even then, I mean, once the tricks are all kind of revealed out there, they're signed on now. They got their tuition money. They're inside and they're plugged in. So obviously, hopefully good things for them coming over the rest of the season. A nice start to kick off. They go ahead and knock down Stony Brook a couple notches. But once again, swapping focus right back over to Stony Brook. I mean, these guys, they are capable of so darn much. I'm just curious to see what this season, and better yet, what the rest of the split with the map rotation, with the incorporation of the Bandit, and even more so with kind of the agent changes in terms of meta, and especially with a lot more waylays than what we saw during last split coming into play now, what they can do with that.
Yeah, I feel like more collegiate teams are starting to finally key into the full fact that duelists, your primary jets, your primary killers aren't inherently the best options anymore, and it is really a battle against utility. And everyone thought that Vito would be the agent to deny that, right? Having your Jaeger ADS style util. No, you already have agents that could do it. You just needed something to extra, elevate the counter activity forward, and Waylay has finally found the safe space for it. But that being said, though, there's plenty more action to go for Division 1 throughout the remainder of this weekend and on the Monday following. Stay tuned for more action from us. That is all we have here tonight. Just 24 hours of a gap in between tomorrow and then starting back up on Sunday. Stay tuned for more from us. My name is Restream here by Dallas. We've been a pleasure as always when you see you guys Sunday and Monday for more.